Yeah, I guess that was. I feel like there was another one, but maybe not.
Mm-hmm. Just seeing if I can make a move. Yeah. All
Oh, sorry.
right.
Did you give us a, a link?
All right. So what I'm gonna
I
do here is I'm gonna give you a pair of positions today.
Cool.
Okay. One of them is a Queen's Gambit style position, and one of them is a Grunfeld style position. So, one thing that's possible. Should I have maybe said an intro before I do this? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Let's check our sound levels before I tell you anything more. Hey everybody. Like, how does Matt sound compared to Rachel, compared to David?
Okay. Testing. What did I have for breakfast today is usually a good way to test sound. I can't even remember.
You
But
don't
is that good
remember.
enough?
For you, it's nighttime.
thinking
What did you
about
have for dinner?
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it already like yeah? Already 4 for me, but I'm thinking of getting another coffee, so I can be super locked in against Matt.
Yeah. Someone streamed 3 hours ago.
It was me. I streamed earlier today as well.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Were you training
Well,
or playing dice chess or?
It was a sponsored stream for chess. It's a like chess learning website called Chess Mind.
Chess Mind.
So,
Okay.
yeah. So I did an hour of that, and then I did an hour of puzzles of
Cool.
the 7. I keep forgetting the name of it. Like 700 practical tactics. You something.
Okay.
I need to find the name. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So chatty chat. Anybody want to tell us if our volume levels are close, or if we need to turn anybody's mic up or down?
Yeah. I feel like Rachel's is a little bit quiet for me, but
Okay. I can. Pretty. Okay. I'm like maxed on mine.
oh, there we go. Yeah, that made a difference.
I made it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, you
Oh,
might
my
have
lord.
gained down on your OBS or something now.
Yeah, no, I'm going to. Hopefully, we'll see.
Hey, Infinity Life.
Ooh.
I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but I'm good.
Yeah.
I love the Fortnite man. I wonder what opening the Fortnite man likes to play.
Nice principled chess.
Thank you, Toro DeBoro. And a follow-up question for me is: do you hear any echo on Matt or Rachel on my thing, Toro?
Echo.
La 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 la.
Like, do you hear them one time or a million times?
Yeah. I might go run and make some coffee if we.
Yeah, get the
We
caffeine.
have-
All right.
I've got a turmeric tea right now.
Ooh.
Yeah,
I hope you fall asleep during
Coffee
our.
versus turmeric.
Okay.
it's my Zen state. I'm gonna be so good and chill at the calculation. It's like the really not what my chess is usually like.
Okay. You hear some of the buzzing from the other room, but not an echo on them talking. Perfect. Thank you.
Great.
Um,
Oh, the study plan's going well, ish. Apart from the not sparring so much, but yeah, this week was a bit patchy. But I will still get all the hours in, just in bigger chunks.
yeah, it looks like you're getting good work done.
Anushka's puzzle test, she smashed that.
Yeah.
When I did that puzzle, I got like 19. I sucked.
Mm-hmm.
That's what prompted me to do 3 months of chess tactics from scratch. So I was like, wow, I really suck.
Yeah, that score for her was crazy. And, tactics is not supposed to be the strongest part of her game, but maybe she doesn't know her own strengths or weaknesses quite yet. So.
Yeah, I was saying that because also one thing is like, actually, I think I'm better at tactics in game. than I am because I've got a better understanding, and I think I'm really bad at just getting understanding. It takes me a while to like get the feel of a position once I like a fresh position once I see it.
Hmm.
Or that's what it feels like anyway. Um,
Yeah. Do you feel like there's anything in the training program that you have right now that should be changed or adjusted
um,
for you?
I there was something. But what in general, I mean, the chess. Yeah, I'm doing a whole lot of chess tactics from scratch, sparring. And I like that's the main thing I'm trying. I want to just get more involved in is the openings stuff for any new openings.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, one thing that I probably should have mentioned is that my black results versus my white results are insanely good.
Mm-hmm.
Like despite sucking against D4,
Yeah.
like if you go on FIDE, all of my losses are with white
Mm-hmm.
and black. I always manage to like I've got very few losses and a lot of wins slash draws.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that is specifically. Maybe I find it easier to sort of be reactive in some sense, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
The most
Um,
the most likely reason is that you're too ambitious with white. You put too much responsibility on yourself to
mm,
prove an advantage, take the fight to the opponent, go for something like exciting and ambitious. You feel like the great responsibility of white. That's the most likely reason.
yeah. Yeah. I also think like when I have like the freedom of the first move, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's just not like I I I think I'm just more aware of what my opponent is attempting when I'm black as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I'm white, I think I have less awareness of them. And I'm like, where should I put my pieces? And probably putting them on bad squares anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway. But yeah, so maybe I need to have a look. Maybe I should review a lot of my white losses as part of my game analysis. I'm just yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're supposed to look at least one game every week, right?
Mhm.
Post a game.
Yeah, I posted my game last week. I'm gonna
Yeah.
put the time in for this week.
Yeah. So, yeah, it makes sense to analyze a game you lost for sure. Okay, so I think everything's good. Rachel, do you have your coffee or is it brewing? How does coffee work?
Yes. Oh, I actually realized I have a yerba mate drink, so I'm good, which is also caffeinated. So I just got
Also
that, and
caffeine.
now we're good.
All right,
Set.
just
Nice,
caffeine
nice.
in a can. Cool. Should we start?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Welcome everybody to Endgame Apprentice. We are working on branding this spin-off to Endgame Sensei. And so right now the idea is that Endgame Sensei is when Jesse watches over to Masters, and Endgame Apprentice will be when myself or Kostya or some other sensei does an endgame session with a couple, rank and file chess students. So here we've got Matt and Rachel from the 16 to 1700 cohort, and they will be battling today. We'll find out whether caffeine or turmeric is better for your endgame play. Does something make you too chill, or do you get just in the right spot zen wise? Do you need a buzz? What does it take to play end games well? You'll also get to hear some of their thoughts and see whether their end game skills play some role in the results as well. So we're going to potentially try to look at two different positions today. And one of the cool things that we're introducing today is the idea that you can improve your opening play, or you can improve your openings, or study your openings, or somehow improve your level in a particular opening during your endgame sparring sessions. Whoa. So I've picked out two positions, which are supposed to be representative, typical kind of positions that could be achieved from openings that Matt and Rachel are in the process of learning. They are each playing in a tournament in a month's time and are changing one of the openings in their repertoire for that tournament, right? So in general, you've got your white opening, your black defense to e4, and your black defense to d4/c4, etc. For a lot of people, it's basically three main pieces of your opening repertoire, so they're changing one out of three and keeping two the same. So I've got positions from that I think are from their new opening repertoires. We're going to throw those positions up. They're going to first identify which opening the positions are from to see if leave your nervousness behind you. You're already on stage and you're going to do just fine. If you can't figure it out, it means there's a problem with my teaching method, not with your chess knowledge. And I'm 100% confident, actually. So,
Okay.
so first we're going to see if you can identify them, and then we're going to have the players take turns saying which position they would prefer to play as, white or black or whatever. They're going to sort of do a compare contrast the evaluation between the two positions. For example, they might say this position is better for white, but this one's equal. So, if I were black, I'd rather defend that one, right? Or they might say in this one, black has the upper hand, white's really bungled it. So if I were white, I would not want to stumble my way into that endgame. So something like that. And then, we'll get into some games. We'll get into some discussions between the players and all the normal stuff. If you've got any questions, just pop them in chat. And if they can make the show better, we'll incorporate them and answer you. All right. So, Rachel and Matt, ready for the positions reveals?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. Do you want me to send you fens or just flash the positions up on my screen and you look at them there, or
Classroom?
classroom? Okay.
Yeah, actually that might be
All right.
easiest.
Yeah.
We're going to pop into a classroom. Create a new room.
What is this song, Matt?
Oh wait, how I've got my audio my audio.
The best
Oh, you
music.
haven't heard Shakira?
No, I was gonna.
Like, come on.
No, I was gonna say
Like,
the best music to listen to for Endgame Apprentice is Shakira, of course.
Shakira. I swear
Yeah,
we
Matt
chess
has
players.
Shakira on right now.
yeah.
We chess players should have like
Amazing.
reworded versions, like Weird Al versions of all the great songs out there. So you can be like,
Yeah.
when you move your pawn like that. All right.
That's,
Oh, baby, when you move your pawn like that,
Yeah.
da-na-na-na, you make your opponent go mad.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's doable.
It's doable. It's definitely doable.
Yeah.
Make any song into a chess song if you try hard enough.
Yeah.
So
find.
Matt, your house line on chess.com?
Yes. Yeah.
No
Same.
no numbers, no anything else.
Yeah.
No anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got an
I'm just
invite
Rage Angel.
pending already. And Rage Angel, you don't have any 225s at the end of your name on here either.
On chess.
I used to, but
you
not
got it changed.
anymore.
Oh, have you pulled
Yeah.
some strings? Like that's
No, they didn't have. Nobody was using that username,
Wow.
surprisingly.
Wow.
So yeah, worked out.
All right. So now you've got an
Oh.
invite pending as well.
Okay, I just saw. I saw the invite, and as I was refreshing the page, and then it went away.
Mm-hmm. We can try
So
again.
you might need to just put it in the Discord if that's okay. Okay.
I can grab
Okay, I
a
see
link
it.
to the board as well. Okay, we're good. All right, so that's position 1.
okay.
Okay.
Who's to move? White.
Both positions are going to be white to move.
Okay.
Let me grab a second position for you. Is that a second caffeine delivery?
Someone just
That was
delivered.
amazing.
I just got delivered an iced coffee.
Iced coffee.
Oh my
Wow.
Into my-
Okay, you're gonna
from Tim
gonna
Hortons.
steamroll me.
Now I'm about
Question is if there's any quantity that's too much, huh?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be moving so fast. Pre-moved my entire game after 10 seconds.
So now I'm going to give you a second position. Okay.
Okay, so what options do we have to select from in terms of openings, or are we just kind of like?
You've got two positions, and then you
Yeah.
have to guess what opening they come from.
Out of all the possible openings
Out of
in the
all
world.
the possible openings in the world.
Oh my god. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, most positions can come from more than one opening, so.
Yeah.
Have you been able to see the two positions? I'm not sure how Classrooms works exactly.
I saw the first one briefly.
Okay.
I see the second one
I saw
now.
the first one and I see the second one now. Yeah.
Okay. So, any thoughts on what opening we're talking about here?
Could this have
Grunfeld.
been a dragon? Oh, I was going to say Sicilian, like dragon, but
I mean, maybe King's Indian, but no. Grunfeld.
Okay, sorry. My computer's doing this horrible thing.
I know what it isn't. Well, I know a couple of things that it isn't. But, yeah. I don't really know anything about the Grunfeld, so I will take Rachel's.
I'm only saying we had an opening sparring with the Grunfeld like less than a week ago, so that's why it's like super fresh.
Right. Okay, Jab squared bishops, rooks on the d-file, imbalance pawn, like 5v4 and 2v1. It's kind of crazy.
Okay. I have to redo my capture. Sorry, folks. My computer's on the fritz. But Rachel, you guessed that this is Grunfeld, I heard.
Yes.
Which you're correct on.
Yeah. So caffeine.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to the other position now and see if you guys can guess the other position. So we'll go here. Games. Whoops, no, that's the wrong one. Still the first one, huh? Okay, here's the second one.
All right.
Or I mean, it was the first one, but
Queen's Gambit. Declined.
yes. Good.
I'm so glad Matt said something because I had no idea.
Yeah, no, I think we both got like the inverse of what we would know. Like,
yeah, fair enough.
It's kind of funny how, all right, the pawn structures, in terms of a similar-ish. I mean, okay, we don't have g6. We don't have like the Fianc as a dark squared bishop, and then we got the two light squared bishops and how they're placed. But yeah,
Yeah, it's oddly similar.
yeah, but probably extremely different.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure after we spar it for 2 hours, we'll know the slight nuances. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, so the idea is that these are positions that are from completely different openings, but that they have something in common, right? I've given you the same material balance of rook and bishop. Matt may already know from a week of studying the Queen's Gambit that with that bishop coming out to h4, you often get those dark squared bishops traded. right? Because white's always trying to get that bishop outside the pawn chain in the queen's gambit. So that's why you've got a different color of bishop, right? Whereas in the Grunfeld, that bishop gets traded a little bit less. So yeah, as long as the queen's gambit position looks somewhat, familiar and identifiable to Matt, and the Grunfeld position was recognizable to Rachel, right? We've achieved the first goal here, right? Which is we've got positions that make sense to you. You see it, you practice, and you're like, oh, I can see how during my games I might be evaluating a position like this and deciding whether or not to trade into it or not.
Yeah.
Right. So, so doing something like that, taking a typical pawn structure, and then the other thing you can do is like you could replace the bishop with a knight or something, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, my board has messed up as well.
Happens.
I had to redo my entire setup mid-show.
No.
Okay, so we're looking at the Queen's Gambit position right now, right?
Yeah.
You could take the same position and say, well, maybe let's imagine that the light squared bishops get traded at a6 or something like that, right? And let's look at this endgame with knights instead of bishops. So you could say rook and knight instead of rook and bishop. And that's a method that I've used in the past to learn new openings for myself and my students, right? Is we'll take a structure that's pretty typical, and then we'll just spar that endgame, and every few games, we just change what pieces are on the board.
That's cool. That's really nice. I like
So
that
you
as
can
well.
just say, oh,
I really like
the
that,
bishop
yeah.
on e2 is a knight on e2, and we give black a knight on f6, or a knight on a5, or whatever you think, and then play it out. And then you can put bishop and knight on against bishop and knight, right? But once you have a basic sense of the opening, you have some idea what pieces are likely to be on, right? In this Queen's Gambit declined, it's very common for the dark squared bishops to get traded on e7 or f6, and, one knight as well, maybe on d5, right? Like, at some point, white plays cd5, black plays knight d5, and those knights trade. So Matt would expect that white has a light squared bishop and or a kingside knight, and black has a light squared bishop and or a queenside knight. So Matt could expect that black's queenside knight might be on d7 or something like that. Might be logical to him. So he might put a knight on d7 and put white's knight on f3 and move the pawn back to f2 or something like that. And he can quickly set up positions that he literally could even have in a game. It might even be more likely than the position you see at the end of a chessable line. You might get this endgame more often than the position on move 13 of a line, because it's one of those all roads lead to Rome kind of things, right? Like, you could have a game where the middle game's completely different, and then at some point you've got rook and knight against rook and knight, or rook and bishop against rook and bishop, in some kind of standoff like this. And we can tell a similar story for the Grunfeld position, Rachel. You could have that position with white's pawn on d4, or white's pawn on d5, or black's pawn on e6. Like, you can make one or two little changes around it, but effectively you have an idea, one pair of knights that's always traded in the Grunfeld, right? And then you just pick one or two pieces that you think you want to practice with the endgame structure.
I should do this with Anushka when we spar on Wednesday.
Totally
I'll talk to her
could.
about it. Yeah.
And everyone out there, you can all do this too. That's the point of these sessions. Well, it's the point of streaming them. I mean, we could just do it on our own, and it would be good for Matt and Rachel in their tournament. But part of what I'm trying to do with these episodes is show you different aspects and elements of endgame sparring, so you understand what the tool can do for your game. Okay. So with that said, we're going to get into each player's thoughts. In general, between sparring games, we share our thoughts freely. We don't hide like a trap from the opponent trying to one-up them in the next game. So we'll tell them if we think their plan was good or bad. You won't, if Matt uses a terrible plan in the first game and Rachel's able to win, she's not going to say, I think your plan was great, you just executed it wrong, in hopes that Matt repeats that same plan in the next game, right? She'll say, like, I think that plan was completely wrong. You ran your A pawn up the board, and then I captured it, and then I had two passed pawns on the queen side. Like, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
But As one exception to our open sharing of information, uh, this is just something traditional from how Jesse always ran the show. We're going to have them each give their thoughts privately before we get into it. So we get their, so Matt's going to say what he thinks of the starting positions. Rachel's going to say what she thinks of the starting positions. And then we'll play the first game without them knowing what the other person thinks. So let's have Rachel pull out your earbuds first. And Matt, you'll tell us which position you would prefer from white side or black side. I mean, where you think the chances stand. You can tell us anything in terms of, like, I think the evaluation is plus 0.1 in a computer way, or you could say I think the advantage is, winning for black, or you could say, I'd rather play black or I'd rather play white. You can put in whatever terms you want. Sometimes I think of these end games, and this might be more precise than a 1700 player would think of it, but sometimes I think of these end games in terms of, like, there's a 40% chance for white to win, a 30% chance of a draw, and a 30% chance for black to win. Like, I sometimes like to think, is it a two-way street or a three-way street? Like, even if you think someone's better, like, if you play this endgame 20 times, can you win it sometimes from the weaker side? Can be an interesting question too. So a win-draw-loss percentage is another way of sort of categorizing the chances. All right.
Okay.
To you, Matt.
All right. We're looking at the Queen's Gambit decline position, right?
Yeah. But it's a compare contrast, so you can refer to either one
yeah.
At any point.
Okay. So just to look at a general sense of the position, so sort of get my head into what is weak, what is strong, etc. We're obviously even material. There is offense, yeah, great. The current sort of weakness for white is the d4 pawn, but they obviously would love to be able to successfully push d5 at some point, that being a potential plan for them. We have 2 against 1 on the queen side, which we would love to make into a pass pawn and promote that as a kind of general plan as well. That's probably our best plan. What I'm trying to think about in terms of just general play is there is an open C file. No one is controlling it currently. Is controlling it good? I am not 100% sure. Depends who's first to move, but there's potential. Obviously, the rook is defending the d pawn. There's only one defender of the d pawn for white, and black's pawns are kind of a little bit tricky to A and B pawns to start attacking and start kind of softening up. I mean, I feel like it's fairly equal position because I'm not seeing anything like that's clearly like a really clear plan for either side. White doesn't necessarily want to isolate their pawn on d5 because if we can kind of trade things off, I think that puts us in a much better position in an end game.
I'm not going to correct
getting
any
to a
of your
place where they can
ideas.
push is hard.
I'm not going to correct any of your ideas at any point, but I'm just going to clarify something. You said maybe it's about equal because there's no clear plan for either side, but you've just given clear plans for both sides. So I think what you mean is you don't see either plan clearly outdoing the other side's plan or being achieved so much faster or better or something like that, right?
Yeah,
I think you did a really good job
by alleviating
plans.
For example, if by alleviate so for example, white takes defense off of d4 if he wants to try and attack the weaker pawns on a7/b6 if a pawn gets pushed. But it does kind of get tricky. I mean, okay, so that there are plans. I find it hard for either side to I think there's kind of counters in general for any of the plans as like an instant kind of feeling. We want to get the kings more active. White's king can come in a bit quicker to the game, so that might give white the slight edge to be able to hold that d pawn and then have a free hand to move their rook, and their bishop is relatively active. It can, well, it's relatively inactive, sorry, because it's blocked by their f pawn. But and you don't want to necessarily push f4 at any point just yet, to get pawns on dark squares. Um, so you'd have to bring your king in, things like that. So I'm thinking more in plans. Whereas black's plan, I think, depending on the time, but I might even try and allow white to push d5 early if I could, and grab the c file. But if it's white to move, which it is, um, we both need to kind of bring our kings in and activate the king. So king comes up, rook c8. I mean, this is more getting into calculation.
Okay.
Now,
Let
and
me
then I can try and
let
get
me
rook
bring up the
c3. I'd love to be
second.
able to target a2. Yeah,
Let me bring up the second position for you. I think you've
yeah,
given us a good overview of the factors here, right? So let's bring up
yeah,
the other position. And I think because you've talked through the elements enough, you kind of remember that position well enough now that you can do a compare
yeah,
contrast without seeing the other
yeah.
position. So here's the second position. You can point out some elements you think are important and try and move us towards which position is better for black or white. Like if I told you you're playing
So
white and you had to pick position 1 or 2, you know which position.
I'd prefer white in this position almost instantly.
Okay.
Just on the basis of how my two pawns are currently structured. So, for example, if I push d5 as white, black, um, if black ever pushes the e pawn, then I've got a passer. So that's something to bear in mind. That said, it might be tricky to that it's timing it at the right point. Black probably can also push, and then we've got potential isolated pawn. That said, like now I'm going to backpedal. That's like my gut feel. But my pawns being on light squares, I quite like. But again, king activity is going to be super important. The bishop placement, this dark squared bishop for black is actually quite strong, because we're obviously targeting the d4 pawn. Once it moves, our bishop will be much more active. But I do think it's tricky for us. But if we also push e6, then I'm always happy to create an isolated pawn with less material on the board for my opponent, especially if I've got a 2v1. So, yeah, it's hard to trade. Because if I was black, would I want to trade? Probably not. I kind of want to get my pawns rolling, but again, this d5 pawn may be slightly annoying. I find this maybe because I've spent a tiny bit less time on it harder because my king can't come in to defend the central pawn so much, but maybe that's not so much of an issue because I will get pawns on light squares. But the timing of d5, I think I don't know if I can play it instantly because d5, e6, d6, rook d7, or even d5, e5, which seems counterintuitive for black, but maybe they will rook d7 and reroute the bishop. I don't know. This pawn is going to feel like an annoying thing for black, I think. Like d5, like because of the structure, that's what it feels like. So black really has to get running on a plan to try and get some form of counterplay, and I'm struggling to see what that is. So maybe like d5,
Can I
e6.
cut you off, Matt?
Yep.
Okay, great stuff. Now, if you had to pick one of these positions to play as white, which position would you prefer? Queen's Gambit or Grunfeld?
I'm gonna just. I would rather play white here in this Grimfield, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Perfect.
Feels so committal.
And do you feel like white maybe has a small advantage in this Grunfeld position?
Yeah,
Or they're just
I
different
do
varieties of
because
equal? Or
I think white has an edge just on the basis that these as soon as d5 gets pushed, these the B and A pawns are also targeted by the bishop, which is weak, and I think it's going to be tricky for black to make progress. I because once d5 is sort of out the way as well, and the white rook is kind of free to move.
All right, excellent.
That's
That's
just
very
questions
clear.
of attacking the center.
We're going to turn it over to Rachel now.
Oh yeah.
Hello.
Hey, Rachel. How's it going?
Good.
You have any thoughts about which position looks more promising for white or black among these?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually just thinking
Also,
that
if
because
anyone in
it's.
chat,
Oh,
I'm not
I might
really
need
going to be reading
Matt
chat.
to mute, or okay, I guess he can't really hear. Yeah, I was like trying to find little nuances in like the first one and the second one. I was like, okay, what's the difference? I feel like I kind of would prefer the first position more for white. I would need to see them side by side or go back to the first position. I was looking at certain like, like you could push d5 and they can't take because like the rooks or something's hanging at the end of the line. I think like you can like seize the c file. Yeah, I would need to go back to the first position, but I think just first impression, I think I would prefer white in the first position over the second one.
Okay. And overall, do you think the positions are close to equal, or that white or black is better in either position? I can switch which position is in front of us if you want.
Yeah, can we go to the first one?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're definitely both close to equal. I feel like the first one, I wonder what it looks like flipped if I flip the board. The first one, I think I prefer white a little bit. There's more space. Like even though black has A and B pawn, I think just like the D5 pushes like, or just the pawns in the center, like the center break is probably a little bit faster, and just yeah, more space, and it feels more comfortable than the bishops on the dark squares. I'm trying to figure out exactly why. But yeah, it just feels like we have more squares and more space than other way around.
And
Yeah,
then
and like
the Grunfeld one, would you say it's fine for black? Is that one equal, or?
Sorry, can we go back to it?
Yep.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to like evaluate these kinds of positions, honestly. Like I feel like there are tiny little details like the pawns being on certain colors.
Sure, there could always be little things that we don't think of at first, right? And that's part of why we spar them out. There's definitely going to be stuff that we didn't anticipate that might change it. It could even be a tactical detail of a specific variation, and I'm not asking you guys to calculate anything yet. But
I think the first position with the bishop on b7, like the pawns, it's not as good of a bishop as the one on g7. I think the g7 is better. I feel like the b7 one might need to figure out what it's doing. I mean, wait for me. Yeah. Because I mean, just with the pawn chain there, it's like not really doing too much on b7. So I think the g7 bishop is better than the e3 one. So I think that's what makes this a little bit better for black compared to the last one. And then our bishop is aiming at b6 a7, which maybe might come in handy later, but not right now. Yeah. So I think this one's probably. I prefer. Yeah. I don't know if I'd prefer playing black here. I feel like it's pretty close to equal though, but maybe I'd prefer playing black here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that's as it should be. We'll signal to Matt to come play with us.
Hopefully it was hard. Yeah, because I tried looking at the position and I was like, oh, I need to start looking at you guys.
Yeah.
Maybe we message in the chat.
Yeah.
Come back. Yeah, I don't know what he's looking at.
Probably the position. He's probably calculating a line intently, trying to get ahead.
He is in the zone. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So, la 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 la. I wonder if there is any way to get his attention. Does he see? I could write Matt with the arrows on the board. Does he see my arrows?
Yeah, that could be cool. He is in the zone. Um.
That was great. I was like, that looked like an M, and I was like, oh, I think they're calling me.
Yeah.
That's
Nice.
funny.
That's great. That's
It
so
worked.
good.
I would not have thought of that.
You
So
wouldn't have
that was
noticed
really
that, huh?
smart on,
Just
yeah.
staring deeply at the position, being like,
Yeah.
It's a really weird pawn move.
You had the look of someone who's definitely into the position, so that's where we found you. So we're ready to play. Matt, you're going to play white in the Grunfeld position. And Rachel, you're going to play white in the Queen's Gambit position. So we're going to switch off like that at first. So just like an interesting little experiment flipping between two positions, but it also is going to quickly give Rachel a chance to defend the Grunfeld's honor, Matt a chance to defend the Queen's Gambit's honor, and find each other in your openings as you do it. So why don't we start the first game with the Queen's Gambit position? So Rachel will take white. Let's do a time control of 5 minutes plus 5 seconds. To start
Not 30
and
seconds?
See how that goes. You want 30 seconds, Rachel?
Or I don't know. I was talking to Anushka about this on the last stream that we did because I know that we had done 5 plus 5 for the opening, and then she said that we in the previous endgame sparring we'd done 5 plus 30. Yeah, because that's more like
that's more how
mimicking
practice
what.
Would be,
yeah.
I wanted to maybe see if we could get a couple more games faster. So
okay, yeah.
That's
either way.
And then when we get towards the end of our time, maybe we could try one game at 2 plus 30, which is more like the normal endgame feel. But partly because I'm trying to fit 2 positions into one episode. We'll see how it works. But so the first game, you want the QGD position. I sent it to you all in Discord, and so you want that position.
I've got the challenge ready. I'm black, right?
With Rachel as white, Matt as black.
Cool. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. I will send the challenge. And do you want us to mute or just pull our... Yeah.
Mute. Okay.
Maybe leave the audio, right? So I don't hear you the whole time.
Oh, we're just gonna mute on Zoom.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. On Zoom. All right, here we got our first position coming up.
Wait, David, I think you need to mute as well. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out my first move. I don't know why it takes... Okay, I just need to make a first move. I don't know what it's going to be, so yeah, okay.
Fair enough.
All right,
it's
sorry.
Okay. Remember, you get a few chances at these, so your first moves don't need to be perfect the first game. You just try something that looks interesting to you, and then we iterate. Okay. So, they get into the first game. Ban it again. It's hopeless. Some people are hopeless, you can do all the training you want, and they're just never going to get anywhere, I'm just having fun. Jessie would mean it. All right, she goes rook c1 on the first move, sacking the d-pawn because of this idea of rook c7 trapping the bishop. So they have been thinking here about little details, and Matt immediately knew he couldn't take the pawn on d4, went straight for rook c8. I didn't know if they would even notice rook c1 was possible on the first move. I thought it might be a revelation in the second or third hour of this session, but here we are straight into the c file. And very quickly, Rachel goes for the passed d-pawn here in this game. And this is going to be maybe a first place for Matt to have a think. he can think whether or not he wants to trade or leave that pawn tension, right? He's probably going to bring his king. He's expecting Rachel might follow up with king d4 or bishop c4. I love it that Matt already preferred black in the queen's gambit position, his opening, and white, relatively speaking, and white in the Grunfeld position he thought had better chances. And Rachel already thought white had better chances in the queen's gambit position, and she felt that black was fully equal in her Grunfeld position. So they're immediately ready to champion their own openings. You can see how fast that happens because they have been studying their new openings for 5 to 10 days each, I think. Studying meaning, by the way, mainly sparring. Not like either of them has a chessable course. So sparring, I gave Matt a few lines for the Queen's Gambit, just a dojo repertoire, and Rachel, I gave her sort of like an ideas introduction while sparring live with Anushka, an opening for the first time, with some guidance from Anushka, who'd played that opening before. She was the one of the three of us who actually had that as a real opening in her repertoire. So, you know, they're just at the very, very beginnings of these openings, but already they're ready to defend the honor of their opening. When they see the position that represents their opening, they have a slight, you know, 1/10 or 2/10 of a pawn bias towards the opening they're going to play, which is right where you want it to be. You need to slightly believe in your stuff. You need to be mildly optimistic about your opening. It was nothing insane like Rachel thought, oh, it's the Grunfeld and I got to the endgame, so I'm winning, or anything like that, you know? Neither of them had anything like that, but they had a mild preference, which I feel, you know, was in the 1/10 to 2/10 of a pawn range from the tone of their voice. They each had a mild preference for the opening that they are supposed to be playing. So that's good. It's right on. Matt, a little surprised that he thought 2 minutes about trading and then went right back into a thought. This was absolutely the right time for him to think, as I indicated that, you know, he might stop there, but then you should have a follow-up. I mean, she recaptures. Where's the plan? Where's the plan of the man? To me, the move king d6 is fairly obvious. It's the best square for the king. It puts pressure on the pawn. It keeps the pawn from advancing further. So I'm surprised he's thinking here. We'll have to figure out later what he was thinking about at this stage. But that was, you know, a third minute on that follow-up there. Maybe he thought king d4 was so obvious for Rachel, he's trying to think ahead about what he wants to do even further thereafter. There's basically two different things black can do from this position, broadly speaking. Number one is you just hold still. You just say, I've got this pawn blockaded. White's got a little more space with their king and their pawn, so I'm just going to hold still. The second plan is to advance these pawns to make your own pass pawn over here. Those are the two large plans. I mean, there's little details as well of how you can do it, right? Like, Matt's move could be designed to tie down White's bishop and then do one of those things. And you could say that's an important part of his plan. There's also could be an idea of like trying to set up pawns on the dark squares on the king's side to try and keep your opponent's pawns on light squares, you know, and they might each rush to see who can get more pawns onto dark squares on that side of the board, right? So there's some little options there, right? And you see him take a dark square with the pawn. But broadly speaking, right, whether you want your pawn on f6 or f7, broadly speaking, the huge ideas are either you hold still or you expand on the queen side where you've got the pawn majority, from Matt's perspective. From White's perspective, I don't really see a whole lot for Rachel to do here. Her pieces have to basically defend the d5 pawn, so she could, like, sometimes you can dream of your opponent running out of moves, getting zugzwanged, and their king having to back off, and then your king comes forward. But here black has both squares covered by pawns, plus it looks like in most positions they should be able to go bishop a8, bishop b7, bishop a8, bishop b7, right? Just back and forth. So I don't currently see any plan for white or danger for black. The danger for black that can emerge in my mind is if you play a6, b5, and it turns out, like trying to get the advantage, and it turns out not to be that good, then you run out of moves, and your king has to step back, and white's king comes into c5, then your pawn majority is not that helpful because the white king is just so far up the board and so powerful. And if we go back to the starting position and talk about, you know, the overall evaluation of the position, black has this outside pass pawn, or outside majority, which could create an outside pass pawn, which can be a big advantage in an endgame because it'll stretch the king. But an outside pass pawn doesn't stretch bishops or rooks, so it only stretches 1/3 of white's forces. And when white has this much space in the center, their king is often going to be very well placed. So this queenside pawn is not going to be that dangerous, usually in a scenario like the one which is developed here, which is a very likely scenario, right? Rachel's king is so well placed, it's unlikely for these two queenside pawns to really become a major problem. So let's see, what else can white do? White could play king e4 in some position, sort of suggesting that she wants to come into f5 and go after everything there. That could force the bishop to back off, and then white's bishop doesn't have to stay defending the pawn, maybe. Could be an option. Another thing to keep in mind is that things can always happen. If any of you have not played many endgames yourselves before or watched much endgame sparring, it doesn't even matter to some extent if there is or isn't any plan for either player to win. People will usually do something and then somebody will lose. Even if you can't like imagine exactly what it might be, they'll come up with something, they'll try some move, the other player will try some move, and then stuff will start happening where they start having to calculate. For example, let's say that for some reason Rachel just played king e4. Just curious, is Matt going to play bishop c8 or something else, right? Let's say she did this. What if Matt plays like a super committal move like king c5 instead of stopping her, right? And then, you know, we get something like bishop b3 here, here, and suddenly we're calculating this king and pawn ending. You see what I mean? This kind of stuff just, it can just come out of nowhere, right? So you get to this position, suddenly they're calculating, you know, like, who do I think is, you know, winning or losing this king and pawn ending? And then if they calculate different lines, then the next thing you know, they're playing these moves that look unnecessary for both players, but that lead the game towards decisive territory. And that's one of the reasons you have to really always keep some time on your clock, stay alert, and not jump to total conclusions about the endgame while you're playing. Okay? It might look like a dead draw, but stuff can still happen. Okay, being asked, what about f4 instead of g4? F4 instead of g4. White hasn't played g4. Maybe f5 instead of g5, like here. If black plays f5 here, if that's what you were asking about, then that actually makes it more dangerous for black because the white king has some ways to perhaps get further to work on black's position. For one thing, you could play f4, hold the pawn on a light square, and look to eventually bring your king here. You can also, let's say I play f4 and black plays g6. You can also get into some interesting questions like the following one. Let's say black's just waiting here, right? h5, gh, bishop d3. You can get this kind of a transformation, you know, very weird thing to keep our eyes on. If white wanted to do this, they should move the pawn off of a3 first and really time it. Actually, I can do it more precisely so I don't seem so dumb to you all. Let's do it like this. We'll wait a move. The bishop's got two moves to keep the bishop tied down, and then we've got h5 takes bishop here with a transition to a different kind of position. Very interesting option for white, which means that black might also want to play h5 themselves. And then Black always has to watch out for this idea. Again, I would play a3 before going for this probably. But you see that transition. So this would be, let's say white's pawn were on a3. This might be real trouble for black right here. So it would be something for black to watch out for. So I think from black's perspective, there's definitely some danger in playing the move f5 instead of g5. And the move f5, white could also react with g4, trying to conquer more squares, just so there's more routes for the king. Totally different than f4. I'm going to catch up with the game now. So we got bishop c8, bishop d3, bishop sitting around, puts the pawn on a dark square, and look, eventually Matt advances that queenside pawn. So could he have played, bishop c8, bishop d7 and seen if white had a plan? Yeah, but he decides to go forward with that pawn, and we'll see what it does. Now he doesn't go for b4 just yet. B4 takes, king c4, pretty much cleans up the pawn. So Rachel brings the bishop back around where it defends d5 and keeps this pawn from queening as well. Matt has seconds to play the game. They've got a 5-second increment on this first game, so we can get more games in more quickly today. Even though it's not the normal classical feeling they're training for. So bishop comes back. Matt goes for b4. So the bishop position on a6, I guess he placed it there to keep white's king from coming and embracing his pawn, huh? We get a pawn trade, and she's just going to chill with the bishop on b3. Matt's got a few more seconds on his clock, which is nice to see. All right, and a pretty fair game so far by both players. Pretty solid. Okay, time ticking. Let me make sure we see the moves. Okay, so Matt has avoided repetition, retreating his bishop instead to a different area. So Rachel re-threatens the idea of king c4. Now Matt stops it again, comes back where he was. I don't see anything for either player to do if they shuffle, but if someone really wants to avoid the draw, I could see something going wrong, so we'll see. They have been prudent with the pawns on the king side, so there's not a lot of pawns left to win with, even if somebody gains an upper hand, and for the moment the position still looks equal to me. All right, and we get a draw.
Hello.
Hey. So that's one game in. Very good. Well played by both of you. Do you have any thoughts or questions you want to share with each other?
I was really happy when the rooks came off, like going chronologically. Yeah, because the pawn structures in terms of me, like I've got more things on dark squares. I do still think it's really hard to try much. I probably play a bit quickly. The isolating of the pawn. Yeah, I wasn't sure whether I should play a6, b5, but I always thought you would a4 on a6 as a move. So I could push b5 and I'd essentially trade these two pawns. Thing is, once I would get all the pawns on dark squares, I actually was worried I gave you an opportunity at the very end when I gave up the diagonal, the f1 to a6 diagonal. I came off of it for just a hot second and you took it. And then I thought you might have time to like maneuver your king in to like try and munch on this pawn. It's probably okay. But I thought you could have maybe have gone like bishop b5 after I went bishop c8, and I was a little bit worried. I think it's okay because I still can target your central pawn, but
Well, like bishop
um,
b5, bishop b7, and then how would I
bishop
continue?
b7. Yeah,
Yeah, and then because
yeah,
then bishop c6 and we trade it off, and then it's
yeah,
yeah, I can't really.
yeah, yeah.
I just figured like bishop b7, I'd have to go back to c4, just defend the pawn again.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
I felt like I should be pushing and I thought I was making progress with these two pawns. Oh, a b5. I was literally just saying I think I've got a shot if I get b5 in and then you pushed a3. Um
yeah,
although I think b5 is coming anyway, but
yeah,
yeah, I was trying to figure out maybe it's all fine. So maybe
yeah.
even
I
before
just
then.
I
Hmm.
mean, yeah, the rook's coming off. I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna make a move, and I just calculated that you couldn't take on d4 after rook
Yeah,
c1,
yeah,
so I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
okay, and then I just played it. Then you played rook c8, and I was like, okay, I don't want this to abort, and I like didn't really feel.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, do I give up the c file? So then I was like, okay, we're just playing a game
Yeah.
without rooks.
I
I guess I was a little bit surprised of like how delayed the A and B pushes were. Like we kind of just resolved the
Oh, really?
entire queens. I don't know. Maybe that's fine. I don't know. I just thought that like if you have 2v1, you just kind of just like I thought that those were the pawns you would prioritize running, but I'm
Hmm.
also not exactly sure how. So, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I think because I was trying to debate earlier whether I push them to try and restrict your bishop to stop it going for like b5 kind of things. And also the reason I spent such a long time on king d6 was because I was actually highly considering like f5, which is like a really counterintuitive move. Hence why I spent a long time trying to figure it out. Because I think I didn't have to rush to d6.
Yeah.
And actually I was thinking like f5. And then if you push like G4, I'd go G5. But then like I was trying to figure out like different ways of clarifying the tension, but I didn't essentially opted to not put a pawn on a light square that I would have to maybe defend because you'll get F4 in and then I might have to take on F4 and split my pawns and
Right.
stuff like that. But I was also just thinking like G5. Um, F6 feels like a kind of strange move, but when we've got the same color bishop, and I obviously am kind of happy to get things on dark squares. So maybe G5 is slightly more the one. I'm also thinking like, um, yeah, because I didn't think I just had to rush for King D6 at all. I was thinking Bishop F5, being like, well, I can try and activate my bishop, or Bishop B7, King D6, which probably would have transposed. Like maybe, like you say, I could probably start with A6, but then I thought A4, and then I
Yeah.
don't feel like I have much after A4.
Yeah.
But maybe in the future it's just like it's something it's constantly holding your bishop there, but my bishop is also being held at the same time to like this small diagonal to protect my
Yeah.
A6 pawn.
And
Um,
I mean, I wasn't sure if I should be playing d5 there. Like maybe it's too
mm,
early or I just didn't really know how
yeah.
to make progress in the position.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know like how exactly to evaluate whether or not playing d5 was good or not in that situation.
Yeah, and the reason I went
Um,
bishop c8 a bit later and you went bishop d3, I was maybe thinking of trying to activate on like h3 and then go bishop g2, and trying to harass from behind, as opposed to like on my side of the board. Um,
yeah,
but again, like wasted so much time on this f5 like calculation stuff that I didn't really have like heaps of time. And there's maybe a world where my bishop actually gets trapped after bishop h3 g4
right.
because I've only got like
Yeah,
two squares to go to and you can just slowly march your king.
yeah,
Um maybe maybe I try and use that. No, because your bishop's on the diagonal anyway.
yeah,
Um if you get your king in, no, I can't because you've got a passer. So you'd have to protect your pawn. That's the thing. I was thinking you have to protect your pawn because if you leave, then maybe I have time to like step in, but I don't think I do anyway.
Okay.
Um,
I'm going to stop
yeah.
so
you
yeah.
guys there. It's very, very good. And we're going to play more games.
Okay,
So,
Okay.
next game, let's give Matt White in the Grunfeld position.
cool.
Okay.
Uh, do you, sorry, could we get the PGN of or
Sure.
Oh,
where can I?
it's in Discord now.
Oh, okay,
I'll send a
sick.
challenge.
Okay,
Um,
perfect.
I will create a challenge.
Yeah, I'm really struggling to come up with general ideas in these kinds of positions. I'm not exactly sure how to go about that. But I guess we'll find out over the course of the sparring.
How to come up with some general ideas?
Yeah, yeah, just general ideas of what to do. I've
Mm-hmm.
just yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you seem to be fine in the game
Okay. Okay.
from what
So
from
I'm
what I've
white,
seen.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you ready? Because I'm about to send
Yes.
challenge.
Perfect.
All right. Good luck.
Okay. See ya. Now you have to move first. Thank goodness. Okay. I do not see your challenge if you sent it in.
Oh,
Oh.
sorry. Let me set it up again. It said can't create challenge for some reason.
Oh.
Uh, okay. So custom position. There you are. Are you in play/online as well? Just double checking.
Yeah.
Okay. Fan. 5-5. I play as white. All right. Oh, I've got a challenge link as well, but I'll send challenge now. Okay. Invalid initial position. It's saying. Did I paste it wrong? Oh, I think would it if it had a space in front, would it die? Is that why?
Not sure.
Okay, let's try once more. Fan. Thank you. Yeah, that should be the same, but I'll make sure there's no spaces.
Hmm.
Okay, the position is showing 5-5. My player is white. All right. No.
Cool. Got it.
All right.
All right.
Cool.
See
Good
you on
luck.
the other side.
There, we've got it going. All right. So they're into the Grunfeld now. Matt takes the white pieces. Rachel gets to play her, 10th game or whatever in the Grunfeld in her life. This one without the opening. Matt immediately goes for d5, taking the bishop's pressure off of the pawn. Rachel mentioned the bishop has great scope, even if the pawn moves away from getting attacked. Again, there's going to be the question of, are they going to come to the c-file or not? And is Rachel going to move or not?
Sorry. For some reason, it doesn't give me the countdown. I don't know if it gave you the countdown, but it just
I
aborts
got
me.
the
So I don't
countdown.
know.
That's why it's like
Okay.
I
Yeah.
will play d5. It's same as but yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I didn't get. Okay.
It
Well.
was a
Okay.
panic d5.
Yeah. I don't. I'm just gonna make a panic move, I think. Okay. All right.
All right. Panic move from Rachel. And Matt valuing the c-file. I mean, she said panic, but we have thought about this position for, 10, 20 minutes before we start the game. So it's not like completely out of the blue. So she's going to try and break this pawn and get scope for her rook because she can't go rook c8. Her alternative, I guess, that I would consider to be this move, stopping rook c7 from going after the coconuts, right? So she goes e6, removing a coconut from the 7th rank. But I presume Matt's going to be looking at rook c7 here. And even if there aren't that many coconuts on the 7th rank, the rook looks amazing there, right? Cutting off the black king, getting in behind the pawn majority to completely neutralize it. Pawn structure has been split by that pawn trade, which is a small defect in some cases. So definitely h5, the panic move or whatever, looks like a very suspicious first move compared to one option, rook c8, somebody suggested. I think there's another possible plan where you just put your rook, on b8, b7, something like that, and be in position to keep pushing these pawns. You could also put your bishop on e5 to stop rook c7 if you don't want to trade rooks as black. So it's not 100% forced to go for that rook trade right away, but if you concede the c file, there's a good chance you're going to be worse in this position. There's a good chance that Rachel already feels that. But again, you know, as a very, very harsh coach, I'm not going to fuller let her off on the, oh, it's a panic thing. I mean, she should be able to play a move within 30 seconds in a position that we've been talking about for 10 or 20 minutes. And additionally, she'd already flagged once and restarted the game again, so that's already a minute. I mean, yeah, it tells us something what our panic responses are. So now she counters rook c7 very nicely. Tempo on the bishop, and woo! Look at that. Look what she's done with the rook, thanks to her e6 move. And Matt comes back on defense, and now the black king can join the game. So I guess there's a question, is there anything better that Matt can do here? Other than being forced to retreat by his rook d3 move. I mean, the bishop's attacked. King f2 makes a lot of sense. If you don't go rook c2, you're sacking things, right? So for example, rook here takes with check, king over here. Maybe we'll hold on to the extra pawn. Ugly as that move is. And then what does white have for the pawn? The rook's amazing, but the opponent's rook is good too. We're kind of tied up and not doing anything, not advancing any pawns, not really attacking anything in particular. Yeah, I think black's fine. I wouldn't give that pawn as white. So back he comes. And here comes Rachel's majority. Wow. Imposing herself very quickly from what looked like, you know, an early blunder or panic here, right? The rook comes to c7. And she just gets her rook out on the d file and starts advancing her pawn majority here. And I guess she's recovered her confidence. She knows that, I think she knows that things are actually fine here. Amazing. So let's look at this position again. After e6, was there anything else to consider for Matt? Trading makes sense. You could start with king f2, but this rook can still come in here, heading over here. You could go for this move, because oddly, even if the king, it seems like you're luring the king up to be better, but if you play rook check and then take this pawn, you're winning for white. So you could go rook c6 here, and if black goes rook a3, then it's very complicated, right? Because now we're comparing white's e pawn to black's b pawn is super imbalanced, so that's an interesting possibility. With rook c6, your opponent could also play e5 immediately. Oh, but then you take this g pawn, so there's no choice there. Ooh. So interesting question. Maybe rook c6 with or without even king f2 first. Interesting. I think rook c6, rook d3, king f2 might be the same as king f2, rook d3, rook c6, you know? But that's a very interesting possibility they had early on here. My OBS says encoded coder error. Oh. Interesting. All right, so let's see where they went. Rook a3, rook c2. The pawn started advancing. f4 with the plan of e5 to lock out black's bishop. Rachel answers with the e5. Now her bishop is locked by her own pawn, but she immediately opens it back up, even if she might lose this pawn. Right? Even if she might lose the pawn, she's prioritizing having this piece open, which is going to be able to support these pawns advance. Very, very good instincts from Rachel, and she made this e4 choice very, very quickly. Maybe she considered some of this before playing e5, because I noticed they spent a lot of time on these two moves here. f4 from Matt and e5 from Rachel. So, and then on this follow-up, they answered pretty quickly. So I think they may have considered this a little bit before they went for it. There's another interesting possibility for Rachel here that looks possible like this. The idea is to play b4. If bishop c5, b4 is fine. The tricky question would be bishop c1, right? Possibly winning material by disrupting the rook and bishop. But it works out okay because there's check, right? King moves, and then something like rook a4 or rook c3, the game goes on. So she did have an alternative there to e5. She went for e5. Matt could have also tried something pretty fancy here with rook c8, but I guess king h7 should be okay. So he played f5, which looks good. Check makes sense. He goes for it here. So now king f7 looks very bad after rook c7 check. So king h7 is going to be the move. And now the big question is, can Matt go rook c7 here? And he does. Otherwise, rook c8 didn't make a lot of sense if he just had to go back to c2. So he goes to c7, and his point is that if these pawns go, he has this big f6 threat. He also has the bishop d4 threat. So he's expecting Rachel to drop back, and then he can at least clean up this pawn, but he might even do something more aggressive, or he might just give checks and make a draw right here. So both players showing very good instincts about keeping all their pieces active, right? We can see that from both players throughout the games, is that they have a very good awareness that they want to keep their pieces active. They're really thinking about the pieces as well as about the pawn structure. And often the further you get into endgames, the more people just worry about, you know, are my pawns on light squares or dark squares, or what's a passed pawn, or this or that. But, you know, they're willing to even sacrifice material in an endgame to keep all their pieces active. It's a very, very good sign. I mean, from the very first move of the very first game, Rachel playing rook c1, leaving her d4 pawn hanging, right? Shows that they are aware of how valuable and important the activity is for the pieces. I think here there's one other move for black, I guess, rook a3, right? That's the other move other than king g8. But yeah, king g8 gets played. I think rook a3, king f4 didn't have much of an advantage for black. So king g8 just gets played. Yeah. And also rook a3, f6, rook e3, check, king f4 could be dangerous for black. So there wasn't a lot of reason to look too hard at that option. King g8, this is going to threaten bishop e5 check, so white doesn't have time for anything too fancy. Like I had this idea of bishop g5, trying to get the pawn to f6. That might really destroy black's king and bishop, but there's bishop e5 check. So Matt's going to have to do something pretty immediate, like rook c8 check or rook a7. I also thought of the move bishop takes a7, which also loses to bishop e5, so he goes for the simpler move here. Get the check. Bishop f8, there's bishop c5 or bishop h6 winning the game, so king h7 is going to be the best option here. We might get another repetition. Let me check in on their faces. Each kind of smiling, like they have some idea that might be required. And yeah, doing great so far. You know, no real mistakes from either side in either game. down to a couple seconds. And then she tries to come out. Yeah, it's also a chance to see, you know, like personality and character, right? If somebody just can't accept a draw, then often the player who can't accept a draw gets to lose, right? Like right there, that's a risky move. It gives Matt bishop c5 for free, right? Just maybe improving the bishop a little bit, just something to worry about. And of course, he can keep going rook c8, rook c7 if he wants. So these are just the kind of like small risks from Rachel that could be slightly worrisome, but we get the draw. All right. Great. So, let's turn back on our mics.
Hello.
All righty. Another good outing. Some quick thoughts from either side.
I guess I just didn't have time to, like, you know, I would have liked to have kept playing. Maybe I should have tried like bishop f8 situation. I don't know. I just didn't see a way to keep playing, I guess. Yeah.
Matt, did you see a way for her to keep playing?
Not. I didn't see it because she just strays too far. Bishop f8, bishop d5 is kind of what if the king's still on g8? Maybe. But yeah, because I was tempted to try and take on a7, but I'm not fast enough. I think I've given up too much for this everything. I was tempted to actually play like a bishop c5 check just to keep it going. But then I like because you still have to go like king g8, and maybe that's getting a bit risky for you if I did play bishop c5. But I mean, I was also kind of low, and if my attack doesn't work, then I'm losing. Or it feels like that way anyway. I'm not sure if that's right, but yeah.
I see a little risk to the idea of rook a7, by the way. Rook a7.
Yeah. I don't think I can stop because the b pawn starts marching, and then my bishop can't handle both.
Yeah.
I mean, my king's close to the other one, but I don't think that matters because yeah, I can't guard.
Yeah. So I know when you don't have a lot of time, you wonder, like, maybe I've got some other way or some other this or that. But I think you guys were forced into a repetition, both of you, at the time when you took it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't regret that too much.
Yeah, I didn't consider rook a3, which I really should have. So that was like a little annoyance. On my part, because I spent a while going, oh, like rook c7 felt slightly off to me, even though it feels like such a great active move. I was wondering whether I should have just gone like well, yeah, king f2, but then you still get your rook h3, so like that's something I just should really have been aware of. I mean, yeah, king f2, rook d3 transposes. I can't go rook c7, so rook c2. And then, I mean, I feel like, obviously with this pawn trade, the pawns are split. My pawns are on a good color complex and stuff, but... and then after b5, I thought I also had chances because the a7 pawn was, like, opened up, but...
Yeah, maybe...
That was...
I mean, I just wanted to play a5, and I never got the chance to do that.
And f4 was... Yeah, again, f4 was bold just to try and muddy the waters a little bit. I was trying to block your coordination.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna make an exception and point something out because I got it wrong during my commentary. So I'm gonna set it straight here, even though it forces me to share something with the two of you. So I was looking at king f2 while you all were playing, and then against rook d3, you know, trying to still head for a3. I was considering an idea of rook c6, trying to be fancier, right? Envisaging maybe trading the a pawn for the e pawn, but also if the opponent's king goes to f7, then you get to c7 with check. and you grab the a7 pawn, which
Yeah.
is pretty obviously good for white.
Right.
But I think during the commentary, I didn't notice or mention that after king f2, rook d3, white can play rook c8 check, like in the game.
I was trying to consider rook c8, but I did actually just didn't want to improve her king. Like,
Right. But against king
uh,
f7, you get rook c7 check, and then take the a pawn.
Right.
wait,
So I have
wait,
to play
that's
king
later though.
h7.
That's after b5, right?
Yeah, but that theme exists even at the beginning, right?
But there's a pawn on b6,
Right.
so
But the black rook is still on d3. It's not yet on a3.
oh, on d3.
Yeah.
So
So if on
d
move 4, instead
d3.
of rook c7, you play king f2. And when the black
Ah,
rook
yeah.
goes to d3 to get active, instead of going to c7
Oh,
and sort of transposing to the game, you throw the check. The king can't go to f7 because it'll just drop the pawn to a
yeah.
double attack, right? And so your idea is that black will go king h7, and now you go rook c7, and
Yeah.
if rook a3, you have bishop d4.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think I saw that while you guys were playing.
I Well, yeah. Because weirdly, I saw the check and then I stopped. Like, I was like, King H7. I was like, the king's kind of safe on H7, and maybe like you start like pushing, you get King G6 in. Uh, okay, you can't push now. Like, maybe it is a bit awkward. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I didn't actually consider my other pieces. I was just like, oh, black's king's kind of snug.
Yeah.
Wait, sorry, could you say the line
Sure.
again?
Yeah.
So after rook c7.
No rook c7.
Okay.
Rook D3.
King F.
On move
Oh, King
4,
F2,
King
yeah.
f2.
Oh, got it. Okay, and then if rook d3. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
I see.
If rook d3, which obviously black has other moves, right? But if rook d3, we then play rook c8 check.
Right.
And
Got it.
if the
And then-
king goes to f7 or h7, which I think it has to do one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Then
mean, bishop
bishop
f8, bishop
d4.
h6 looks lost. King f7,
Yeah.
rook c7 looks lost. So we're going to assume king h7 for now, and then rook c7.
Yeah.
And now, against rook a3, white has bishop d4. So that's the whole reason for this trick. It's very counterintuitive to waste a tempo to improve black's king, right? But it's a little tactic that keeps the rook from moving off of the d3 square for one move. And there's kind of a race for who attacks the a pawn first going on here. So that's a very important little technique at the start of that game.
Yeah.
I was also, I mean, yeah, like looking back at b5 too, I was like, okay, maybe I should have played king h7 to prepare for b5.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that just allows for rook c7 right away with like bishop d4, but yeah, I guess my king is kind of, I'm not really sure how to, maybe I need to move my bishop. I don't know. Yeah, my king is pretty unsafe here. I wasn't super, like, I just kind of made a random move for the first two moves. So
Yeah.
I think next time I want to keep the f pawn on f7 just for like king safety purposes. Because after the f pawn is gone, I think it's really annoying for me
I
to
mean,
deal with.
Maybe even Rook C6 was slightly better than Rook C7 as well, just balancing
it
a
was an
pawn
interesting move
directly.
as well.
I also, I guess, I don't know if f4. I felt happy with f4. Like I was like confused
Oh,
at
when I
first
played
why you
F4.
played f4. Yeah.
Yeah,
Then I was like, oh, you're going for e5. But I was like, if I go e5 first, then like I'm basically guaranteed for my pawn to leave the e file and
Yeah.
or leave the diagonal.
I got like an itch to try and be a bit more tactical.
Yeah.
An F4, like again, yeah, it's probably like it's one of those where it's like really okay. You can go like, oh yeah, you're trying to block E5, so I can push E5 myself, but then I get a passed pawn, and so do you, and I get like, and I give up this A pawn, which is super dangerous, but I also get very active, which I liked. But it's I just needed to like chill. But I was thinking like Bishop C1, so my actual main candidate was Bishop C1.
Yeah.
Trying to kick the rook, but then I had no way of going Bishop B2. So your bishop was really strong and really annoyed me. So I just opted to try and block it. And then was looking. I know I found this idea really interesting with F4, E5, F5, takes, rook C7.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw that like the check and all right, King G3. I'm getting on a dark square, which is also a little bit scary, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that was
Yeah.
I couldn't help myself kind of moment. I don't,
Yeah.
I thought it was quite
I
interesting,
mean,
so I
it
wanted to play
definitely
it.
weakens my king even more. Like yeah. Now that we played through it and got a draw that way, I was like, yeah, with the pawn at F5 and no pawns around my
What
king, like it's really hard for me to stay
I
alive.
was I was wondering if you just keep your pawn on E5 like a little bit longer because like I was also wondering can I walk my king to like actually after I checked maybe I should have just gone like King G6. Oh no, I didn't have it just then. No, I couldn't have it. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Maybe keeping the pawn e5 for a bit would have been nice
oh
to stop the.
my. Okay, no, I didn't blunder. I thought I blundered a fork for a second, but you were pinned. I was
Yeah,
just like,
I thought so too. I was like,
and
yay, and I literally moved the
I
bishop
was
and
like,
it
no, no,
wasn't moving, and I
yeah,
was like, oh.
I did. I did not blunder that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I had the checks. Yeah, this was the thing. This was I was just
Yeah,
like had a
maybe.
heart attack moment. Um,
So maybe e4 wasn't good because it opened up, it allowed you to play like bishop d4 type of thing where, yeah, my bishops maybe, yeah. I think after e4, then you have like, yeah, rook c8
yeah,
and then
yeah.
bishop
Then I
d4
have
and my,
the
yeah,
checks.
the pawn on e5 maybe protects my king some more.
Yeah, but I what I would also probably try and do, which might be too much, is King F3, but you have Bishop H6. And then I've got to go Rook E2, but then you can
Yeah.
take takes, and then you get the pawn anyway. But then I get the other pawn, but you've got connected passes. Can I pick up B5? No, I don't think so. Um,
What move would we be playing instead of e4 for black?
That's a good question. I don't know. Let's say like a5.
A5, yeah,
So then Matt's saying like king
get
f3,
rolling.
bishop h6, rook e2, right?
I think I'm happy with this. I mean, your rook's pretty passive. I'm
Although on A5, can
pushing.
I? No, I don't have Rook C5 either.
Yeah, I think I
Oh,
think
A5
a5
Rook
is.
B2. Yeah, yeah. B4. And then I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
I think looking
uh,
back, maybe I'd try a5 instead.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So that's an alternative for you to going straight into the lines with e4.
yeah. I think that's
Now
Yeah.
against
really
a5,
tricky.
maybe white can do a similar thing with rook c8, rook c7 kind of idea. Try and do the same thing. Even though the a pawn's not hanging, just try and force a perpetual against your king position, right? So
Right.
that's still going to be the big question.
But I guess can I play?
But
I think
also
now I
E5's
can.
there, so
Yeah, if
I
e5, I
can't
can
pin with my bishop.
play king
But I have F6
f6.
ideas. I have F6 ideas. Um,
But like rook c8, king f7, rook c7, king f6, and I think
uh,
I
can I do like a tricky trade or something? Um,
I think I escape after king
yeah.
f6.
But yeah, your bishop can't move just yet. Maybe I've like tried. No, I was gonna try like bishop c5, but then rook a2, king f3.
Yeah, maybe I think e5 was a huge game changer. Like super
Hmm.
important not to push that pawn.
Yeah,
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 just opening lines for your bishop. Yeah.
yeah.
I
Interesting.
mean,
Wow.
also mine, which was my intention of moving it. I was like, oh yeah, my bishop's free again, and you can't go to f3. That was my thought process, but
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much it weakened my king.
So some
Yeah, and
interesting
also
things.
actually,
Sorry, Matt. Some
another
interesting
consideration
things.
was just yeah.
Some interesting things, chat, that they've pointed out here that I just want to highlight. One thing is that they keep talking about the king safety for black, right? And Rachel's saying I moved the f pawn, and then there's king safety for my king, and then I play e4, and then white's bishop, gets access. And this is an endgame, right? Not a queen endgame even, right? And so it's interesting that in the endgame we still have this feeling of like, oh, sometimes a king can get kind of harassed. From a different perspective, you want to play a move like f5 so you can bring your king into the center, right? And Matt, early on, when they were just starting to get into the game, he was not wanting to play a move like rook c8 because it brings black's king towards f7 and towards the center, right? So it's interesting that you've got this dynamic around the king in the endgame, right? That often you want to bring him out, but sometimes things are not that easy for the king. He needs to sort of be or he wants to be active but unharassed, right? Which kind of every piece wants throughout the game. You're looking for squares that are a combination of useful and like less harassable for your opponent, right? Even your knights prefer not to get harassed by pawns when they're fighting in the center, but it happens. And the king, of course, is going to be the most finicky about getting harassed. And then another interesting thing that we note is that compared to the first game where the rooks were traded, the second game with the rooks on was so much more complicated, right? Just in terms of the tactical possibilities for each side, the ability to make threats and make combinations. In the first game, they never talked about king safety. It was not mentioned. And here it was, so when Rachel's playing a move like e5, e4 to loose her g7 bishop by reopening his diagonal, that's like a very basic King's Indian instinct, which she has from the King's Indian, that even if you lose that e-pawn, like you just get your bishop open. And so all Rachel's training in King's Indian middle games says you play e4 almost without a thought, right? It's the instinct move.
Yeah.
Of course, if you're in a classical game, maybe you think a bit, but you kind of know you're playing the move. Here in the end game, it was very interesting that she goes back and says, maybe I could leave my pawn on the dark square, blocking my bishop, and just continue the queenside plan with the pawn majority, right? So it's interesting. It's introducing this concept that in the end game, there's a different kind of relationship around time. And sometimes, if your main plan is to queen your b pawn, let's say, as black, then anything else you're going to do, there has to be a pretty strong argument for why you're taking time to do that other thing, right? Like, you can improve your bishop to f6, or your king to f7, or your a7 pawn to a light square on a6, or whatever it might be. But, like, anything you do, it has to be, like, compared against, what if we just kept trying to queen our pawn? And so endgames sometimes have a very slow pace where it's like improve every piece, centralize your king, move every pawn onto a light square before you advance, just so something's not hanging after you start the action. But there are other times in endgames where you get more of a race feeling, where it's like just push your majority or push your passed pawn, right? And every distraction from that is maybe an opportunity missed. So some really interesting themes from that game, and let's keep playing.
It's a really good note. Are we gonna go back to switching colors
so
and switching?
Go back, and we're gonna switch colors and positions. So again, Matt is going to defend the Queen's Gambit.
Okay.
And Rachel will try to prove that 1d4 can lead to something for white.
Sounds good. Okay. I'm not going to trade rooks this time.
Okay.
We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, so new plan coming in for white.
Okay.
And remember, everybody, keynote with endgame sparring, right? You are allowed to just try out plans that you think are interesting, because you can iterate. You just try a plan, and then if you're like, oh yeah, I didn't like that, you just go back to the other plan next time. You can also tell your opponent in advance what plan you're going to use, because you're kind of exploring together, right? And you're saying, like, I want to try this plan, and your opponent can tell you, sure, go for it, or no, that's not going to work. And it's just part of the way we move forward.
Yeah. Okay, just confirming, I'm black, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, cool. I am sending the challenge.
Cool. Okay. See you on the other side.
Yeah.
All right. So now I'm seeing it from Black's perspective here, Matt's side, and Rachel kicks it off with just thrusting that pass pawn forward with rooks on the board. Pawn takes, pawn takes. What is she planning against rook d5? We'll see. But this is like absolutely great. Even if she's blundering the pawn, which she might be, this is just how you advance. You just try some things out. You can always, Matt doesn't go for it. So let me just do a little calculation here for a second and check on that for you all and for them. But you can always just try a move, and if it doesn't work out, you resign or you offer a draw and you start the next game. But let's see, what would have happened against rook d5? I mean, I can see this idea, bishop d5, bishop c4, winning material. But rook d5, what tactic does white have in mind? I just don't see it. I think they may have just had a little blunderoo at the start here, maybe. We'll see. We get rook d6, king f2, king f8, king e3. As far as I can tell, black can still play rook d5 in all these positions. Now Matt goes for it. And how do they react? Matt's laughing like... And Rachel's like, wait a minute. Okay. Funny moment of realization. They each now chuckling with their chats. This is fine. This happens. They're gonna be taking it a little bit harder than they should probably. I'm used to doing this. I'm used to blowing my sparring games, with all kinds of blunders and then just starting new ones. I don't think so much of it. Okay, we've got to move from Rachel. She keeps the rooks on the board. And now Matt's got a choice between, rook d7, rook c5, rook e5, rook a5. Rook a5, rook c7, bishop d5. Might be a safe way to win a second pawn, honestly. It's an important move, technical move. It's also an option for Rachel to just, resign at that point and start another game. That's always plausible depending on what you're trying to work on in your endgame sparring. If they're really focused on just working on all their endgame skills, then they want to play something like this out, to practice, how good am I at playing rook and bishop up a pawn, right? Let's say their focus was rook and bishop endings. If their focus is, Queen's Gambit or Grunfeld, improving their understanding of their openings, they can just resign if an idea doesn't work out on move 2 or 3 and just start a new game. You don't need to torture yourself with that position, or you know what I mean. You don't. There's no obligation to go through every step of it, right? You can focus your time on what you're more focused on. Rook c5. Fine looking move. If Rachel moves away, that's a more powerful file for Matt. Like if rook d1 happens, king e7, Matt now has the better file because this rook is closer to black's king. There's less invasion points. And he just had to calculate carefully that rook c5, pawn c5, the white king's closer to the pawn. He has to calculate that he doesn't lose the pawn. Yeah, and it was actually quite safe. So Rachel leaves those pieces on the board. Key 7 gets played. But I would guess this position's technically winning for black. This last remaining pawn looks pretty weak and isolated. A king and pawn ending is a win for sure. A bishop ending is a win for sure. A rook ending is still holdable, I guess. I mean, if you go here in a rook ending, imagine no bishops on the board. Rook here. Move your king up. Check the king. Back to the second rank. Expand. Push. Maybe it's even lost in a rook ending. Okay, so pawn goes to a dark square. Now Matt could start going after that A pawn already, right? Bishop d5 is already a candidate, or he might try and advance his B and A pawns, but I think we should victimize that A pawn, and he feels similarly. He goes after with his rook, but this allows bishop c4, which Rachel doesn't spot just yet. But it's very important which bishop gets the diagonal first, actually, right? Because white plays bishop c4, you're never really going to pressure that pawn. Bishop a6. He wants the rook ending. Rachel looks disappointed. Is she disappointed in Matt or in her position? The rook ending is the worst of the possible endings here, right? I think it might also be winning, but the bishop ending's for sure winning, king ending's for sure winning, rook ending, I honestly have to guess. I don't even know for sure. Extra pawn, more active rook. It's like either winning or on the borderline of winning, but it's like so easy not to win it. Like the difficulty level, even if it is winning, which I'd say there's maybe a 90% chance that it's winning. Even if it is winning, the difficulty level is so much higher. The possibility to not win it because of a small slip. All right, Mac has another chance to find bishop c4 as Rachel avoids his offered trade into the rook ending. So now we're seeing more of their like general endgame skills here, right? As we're getting a bigger advantage for one side or another, and then seeing the technical choices they make. Rachel's believing Matt when he wants to trade light squared bishops. She says if he wants to, then I don't want to, but in fact, yeah. So as far as I can see, bishop c4 is still very good. Now it would force the pawn to a4, and then you'd have to bring your bishop back around and attack it more. Pawn's probably not dead anymore. It's already much improved. Okay, so he gives the check, hoping to not allow the pawn to a4. That's what Matt's up to, and he wants to play bishop c4 next. And Rachel has a tough call here to maybe play king d4 to prevent bishop c4. She's both enticed and worried about bringing the king up like that, I imagine. It feels a little bit risky from last game, like is my king going to be in the way of something? But it's also the dream in the endgame is to bring your king into a great square. And she makes the right choice, you know. She hesitated about it a bit. She doesn't feel totally confident, but she did make the right choice there. Now, from Matt's side, I would probably play g5, gaining some space on the king side, trying to restrain these kind of moves because of trades and some attempt to attack those pawns. He just comes back attacking that f pawn. She'll be happy to move it up, and she plays that move reasonably quickly. And the rook goes back. And the bishop takes over the key diagonal, defending that pawn on a2. I would guess that Matt's going to go for a plan like bishop c8 to e6 or something. Oh, but there's rook e8 and stuff. Yeah. Rachel's pieces are looking pretty large and in charge, given that Matt managed to get the rook to the a file, which is really good, but she's arranged her king and bishop better than him, and right now it's a little bit floundering for a plan of attack for black, right? Hard to come up with a plan, and so his rook moves away, and for now, yeah, he's got a pawn, but no plans to use it just yet. Of course, he's still up a nice clean pawn, and there's all kinds of time to come up with other plans, and you know, losing time in the endgame is often not very significant. So we'll see what he does from here, but Rachel has set up just maximum like defenses here. Pawns on the dark squares, holding the king away, gaining some space on the king side. Bishop looking at this. The rook can get active if it wants to. Not really clear how to contain this position for Matt. I still feel like he needs to move like g5 to make some more space for his king by engaging with that pawn structure there. He's going to have to get his bishop into better position so he doesn't run into problems defending the A-pawn at an inopportune moment. G4. Rachel gets too aggressive. I'm just going to guess. And really low on time. Maybe she's feeling like she needs to do even more, and yeah, she's getting excited about Matt's king being badly placed, so she's looking at H4 and G5. Trying to really abuse that king's position, but things are not that desperate for white. Excuse me. This was a fine position for just sitting there and asking your opponent how they intend to beat you. Yeah. G6 played. Yeah, there we go. Rook E8, just a slightly annoying move, right? It could go to F8, it could go to E7, it could go to B8. Rachel's frequent opponent, Anushka, cheering her on in her chat, believing in Rachel's endgame abilities, having faced them herself. And Matt brings the bishop back around. Yeah, it was on a nice long diagonal, but it was doing nothing, and now it's immediately felt. Immediately felt. Targets the G-pawn, could come to E6 to diffuse some things. H3, and brings the bishop out quite quickly. And we're going to get the trade hurting his pawn structure. There's definitely a little bit of like king position weakness for black here, but Matt is going to go back to A5 against rook A8, right? So no, he goes passive. What? Gets checked a little bit. And Rachel stays active. She wants this if she can ever get it. Wow, and she avoids a repetition with rook F8. That's insane confidence. Check. King comes up. Madness. The white rook comes to F6 and starts winning pawns. And Rachel's playing as if she's not down a pawn in this endgame. Incredible. So Matt's plan is going to be to try and counterattack H4 and then F4 and just kind of simplify here. Keeping his cool, actually, because rook F6 was a terrifying moment where you might feel like, oh shoot, I'm going to lose this endgame. From the side with the extra pawn, nice aggressive move from Rachel still. I fancy her chances to beat weaker players in the endgame from totally equal positions, seeing how she's playing this, or even from worse positions. She's got all the instincts for putting like maximum practical problems on your opponent. Also very, very high risk taking. You know, she can lose games with the same method that she... Oh my god! And Matt trades rooks, which is going to let her queen, her G-pawn... Oh, he doesn't take on F4. H3, G6, H2, G7, H1, G1. We're going to get a queen ending now. Madness. Absolute madness. I guess queen B8 is clearly okay for white if they find it. And, you know, people like to check when they get a new queen. You know, sometimes it's been 30 moves since you were able to give a check. Suddenly you've got the power of a queen again in your hands. Folks look for checks. There you go. Oh, shoot. Matt wants to go queen H7. That's evil. Rachel doesn't bite on the pawn for now. Instead, she centralizes the queen and completely gives up on the idea of taking the A-pawn. Just says, let's maybe give some perpetual checks. Yeah, quite a battle. Quite a battle. You know, right before Matt traded rooks, he may have actually been winning. But he was terrified because Rachel was trying to win. And, you know, in this position here, fairly simple to take this pawn, threatening rook takes g5 with just a mop up, right? Looks very, very close to white being lost, and against king. Oh my god, something dramatic happened. Somebody did win at the end. Let's see. Check. King e5, check here. Oh, and the queen.
That was probably the worst game I've played in a very, very long time.
Yeah, I let you get like way in there as well. Like, oh my God, like, well, I don't know. You played like, I think we both didn't play great, but like you gave up the pawn. Like we both didn't realize like just hanging pawn. Like I don't know what I was just yeah.
It all
Yeah.
went downhill from there
Yeah,
because I was
yeah.
like, oh, the bishop can't take it, just not even calculating the rook to take it. And
It
then
didn't. No, I don't think it went downhill. Like I think, to be honest, you might have been winning at one of those like points because
no,
at the end there, like I
It was a
locked my
draw.
king into like this fortress of doom, and I think you just had like maybe like rook f6 or rook h6 kind of ideas. Like I was just trying to be sneaky and run the pawn through. But yeah.
All right, can I just say, I think I've got very different standards than you two because I thought that was a great game.
I just like I kept making like as soon as I make the move, I was like, oh wow, Matt could just do that, and I'm just worse. Like I think after rook a like rook a5, and I was like rook d2, and I thought bishop d5, and I was just done. I mean,
Really?
I
'Cause
did also
I
start
thought
it
I
off
just actually
when
tied myself up a little bit. Like I was trying to just target a weakness, but I just don't think it's like I can just keep active in the center of the board. My king on e7's like didn't need to be there really. Like I just needed to.
I think Rachel's saying if you played bishop d5, the a pawn was dead.
yeah, you
Oh,
just
In
won.
oh yeah,
combination
yeah,
with your
yeah,
rook.
yeah. Well, I was gonna play bishop c4, as well, but
Yeah.
instead of the rook check.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that was the plan. But then something in my head, like I got in my head about it for some reason.
Yeah, I think at that point, if you go bishop c4, she can play the move a4. So maybe you play rook a3 to keep.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
pawn
it's
on A2.
a4. Yeah,
But
and
then she
then-
correctly brought the king forward, stopping bishop c4.
And I thought like king e5, I thought was a really bad move.
no,
I'm
I
not
thought.
maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it
Oh.
wasn't. I don't know what other alternative I have looking at it now, but like after rook c5, I thought that you were gonna take on f4. Oh, well, then maybe I play king f6 and yeah,
I was
maybe
I was thinking about taking f4 and f4 rook f6. Oh no, but then king takes. Yeah, no, that was way better. Again, just sort of ghost slow time trouble. Because then take king f6, rook check, king down, takes. I push. You move your king. I push. You
Yeah.
promote with checks though.
I thought yeah, rook c5 and then king takes e6. I think if king takes f4 and then I like the only way to defend it is king f6. Then you play rook f5 check, I have to leave, and then you take g5.
Oh, rook f5, of course.
And then I was like,
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Very,
I
very,
think-
very, very scary moment for for white there. That that king f4 and the g pawn looks dead. I think if we analyze this position and turned it into an endgame puzzle, there's a chance that white has a surprise drawing move there of rook g7. The idea being rook takes g5, rook takes a7, rook to a5, rook to b7. Might be the only way to draw. I might use that as a puzzle one day.
Right.
But
Oh, wow.
definitely it was
Wow.
looking scary for a moment there in the blitz off. Rachel was trying to win down a pawn. Very, very clear, bloodthirsty vibes.
Yeah, that's the way. we usually have this like opposite thing. So it's the mindset I go into when like I'm always down in all of my classical games, and somehow I like wangle it, and Rachel's always like, I need to do that.
yeah. I mean, what is like it was such a draw. Like I just need to check around and just
If
not
I didn't go
hang
king
my
f5,
queen.
yeah, if I didn't go king f5, because I thought f5, I could have gone king almost, king e3, not on the diagonal, but I was really hoping you were going to take on a7. Good old hope chess. Um,
Wait, which move is this?
so when you promote Queen B8 check, I went King F5. Um,
Oh yeah.
I was just looking for the
Yeah,
skewer.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I gave it to you anyway,
Right.
so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
True.
Yeah, that was like my one job. I was like, okay, let's not trade queens. That's the only thing. And then I played Queen D6, and I was like, wow, that's just really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was unfortunate, but yeah, maybe just like yeah. I mean, any other kind of check. I guess only yeah, like Queen F6, Queen G4, literally anything else, any other check there.
Queen endings are a
But
whole other chapter there.
oh,
Yeah,
I haven't reached that chapter myself yet.
I
and I
can't
was
deal with queen endings. You have to think so hard. Like there's so many moves and so many checks. It's just
yeah.
it's impossible.
Um, I was thinking that you're gonna play Rook C2. I don't know like what the instead of Rook A5. I don't know like David what your thoughts are on
Oh,
like being down a
yeah, I was
pawn.
also gonna do that.
I
Yeah.
was I was thinking that like I don't know. I know that like Rook endgames where there's one pawn, it's like closer to being drawish. So I figured like if I were to trade anything, I'd want to trade the bishops and keep the rooks. Um, or not trade anything at all. But I thought after Rook C2, like you know, yeah, maybe people in the chat were saying that Rook A5 is better just because of the Bishop D5 idea. And then Rook C2 allows like me to push sometimes, but yeah, I was yeah, Rook C2 I was like a little bit worried about, yes. But
Sorry, what move is this, Rachel?
Instead of Rook
uh
A5, playing Rook
instead of Rook
C2.
A5 with number 7 or move 7.
Move
Okay,
seven.
at the beginning.
But yeah, it makes sense that
Right,
A5
right.
looks a little bit better.
I know where you mean, yeah. Right, Rook C2
Yeah,
there
that
looks
was
good too.
that was like the first move I wanted to play, but then I was like, ooh, pawn weakness.
Yeah.
Let's put all my pieces on the edge of the board.
But-
Yeah, I'll just say, because I think we only have time for one more game.
Mhm.
Rook A5 does let white play Bishop C4, and so there's actually
Yeah.
like a priority around the diagonal here. And so I think Bishop D5 is better than
Just
Rook
straight away.
A5 or Rook C2. Just straight away
Sure.
get that bishop to
Yeah.
the best diagonals.
Right.
But yeah, Rook C2 is an interesting thought as well, and I don't know for sure. That's just an instinct. What I want to do now is maybe try one game at 2+30.
Okay.
Using our other position. So we're going to rotate back to the other position. We'll do the Grunfeld position. So Matt will take the white pieces again. Rachel will take the black pieces. I encourage you, like, if you feel like something goes wrong in the first two moves, like somebody hangs a pawn or a bishop or something like that, realize you can always just like resign or offer a draw and just do another iteration. You don't have to play out every
Right.
game
Yeah.
to the bitter end, especially if we're going to have like a 30-second increment.
Yeah.
Really quick, do you have any tips on like what like in this in this situation where I'm down a pawn, like would you prioritize not trading anything or like just trading the bishops or like what would you say in terms of trading things?
So the king and pawn ending is dead.
Yeah.
The same colored bishop ending is pretty much dead.
Yeah.
Like you've got limited
rook
practical
is-
chances. Objectively, you're losing. Maybe every now and then someone will blunder it against you, but for the most part,
Yeah.
like it'll be a pretty easy conversion at your rating level.
Yeah.
The rook and pawn ending, I think is winning, but like people are gonna
It's
mess
harder.
it up so much. It's so hard to do.
Yeah.
So if you have a chance to go into the pure rook ending, like he gave you with the bishop trade at the beginning, it's a fair thought to take it, because most people will give you some chances to save that endgame at some point. But given how you kept playing just with more pieces on the board, that also has its difficulty that he has to coordinate two pieces, you coordinate two pieces, and you saw when you got your bishop to c4 and pawn to f4, you were very, very close to drawing, right? Like he didn't really
Right.
have a winning plan.
Yeah.
And if anything, you lost the game because you tried so hard to win, right?
Yeah.
Which I think tells us that you already felt pretty confident with how well you defended for a while there, and you
Right.
knew that you weren't in huge danger. So I think like overall you defended it very well with the rook bishop versus rook bishop. So your choice was fine to not trade anything.
Okay.
But trading bishops would also have made sense from a certain perspective.
Okay.
Okay, so the last game is going to be our Grunfeld position.
And I am white again.
Yes.
And Matt white.
Okay, cool. I will send the challenge.
And because I know there's like a time issue for you, Rachel, like when we hit the point where you have to leave, you could just adjudicate the game if you need to. Like you could, if you think you're winning, you could ask Matt to resign. If you think you're drawing, you could offer a draw. If you think you're losing, you could resign. Or you could just reconnect to chat and I could help you guys adjudicate.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah.
Where you're at.
I mean, it shouldn't. I don't think it'll be a 30-minute game, but yeah.
Just in case.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not tournament conditions here. It's like casual. We're training
right,
together.
Right.
So we just
got it.
We can stop games, whatever we need to do.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay. Sending challenge.
Okay. See ya.
All right. So now they've got the 30-second increment. We've got the Grunfeld position. First game, Matt went straight for d5. It's not forced, right? I mean, I think another thing I could easily imagine someone doing is just moving the king towards the middle of the board, and he's going to take a different line this game and start with king f2. That puts, to my mind, that almost makes it a little bit harder for black to know what they want to do when they have to like wait on whether or not we're doing this. There's the possibility of like rook c8 with the open file. Probably, and here's like the most aggressive possibility. Rachel goes like immediately. You can feel a confident player here. She starts expanding her majority right away. Which might be partly my fault because I did make that comment earlier today, emphasizing like sometimes you just want to advance your majority, and you don't need to do all the other niceties. You don't need to put every pawn on a light square. You may not even need to centralize your king. Sometimes get your thing going. But generally my hierarchy when I see these endgames here, and for decades I wondered what the hierarchy was supposed to be. Maybe for like 15, 20 years I wondered what the hierarchy was supposed to be of like priorities in an endgame like this. Do I want space? Do I want to like get pawns on light squares? Do I want to activate the bishop? Do I want to activate the rook? Do I want to centralize the king? Do I want to advance my majority? For so long I thought about it without having any clue, and finally I formed a kind of theory which I think Sam told me was not completely stupid, Sam Shanklin being a strong player, and it goes like this. Like the first thing I would prioritize is my rook activity. Especially if I can do it in like 1 to 2 moves, I would activate my rook first, right? And then it would be like the next strongest piece, right? So then I would ask myself, does the bishop need any like clear optimization? Again, it's like strength of the piece divided by the time that it takes. It would take 6 moves to improve my bishop or 2 moves to improve my king. The king's not really much weaker than a bishop, so I'll improve the king, right? So it's going to be what can you improve the most, the fastest is kind of my hierarchy. So I'm definitely going to look at the pieces nowadays first before I start looking at little pawn moves. Not little pawn moves. They're big pawn moves, right? They're big deals. G4 for white is a classic move in these endgames to gain space on the king side and stop your opponent from as easily playing moves like f5 and h5 to gain space, because they'll create a really bad pawn weakness. And when you prevent them from gaining space, then that gives you more targets to push against later on, right? So there's a whole hierarchy, but nowadays, like I'll usually look to the strongest pieces first, and then to questions of pawn structure. So from Rachel's side, it's very aggressive doing these pawn moves, but I know like in the old days, that's what I'd be looking at. I'd be looking at trying to not trade rooks on the c file. I'd be looking at, can I, put my rook on the b file, push these pawns. I want the rook behind the candidate passer. When you see this 2-on-1 pawn majority, which of those 2 pawns is most likely to be the pass pawn? It's the one that's not blocked by an opposing pawn, right? Because this one eventually goes to b3, gets traded, and you capture back. Of course, there are breakthroughs and tricks that can change it, so it's not guaranteed to be a b pawn, but that's the more likely pass pawn. So I always look to that pawn first, and that's the pawn I want to move before the other pawn. Look at Rachel correctly playing b5 first. A move like a5 generally terrible because of a4, and your pawns are just in the wrong shape to get past this pawn, right? They can get frozen and become nigh worthless. So she advances them in the right order, and then I also usually want my rook behind this pawn, which I always want to be the pawn that's in front. 2 minutes of thought just now from Rachel, and she they've got a 30-second increment so they can build up time and then use it here and there. So she now, once d5 gets played, somehow that with her is associated with wanting space for her king. Huh. Interesting. Because suddenly she took the the brakes off this whole thing. I guess one needs to be a little careful about bishop b6. But yeah, I could have expected a move like rook b8 out of Rachel here. Seemed plausible. Of course, this rook c8 is a good consideration as well. And often this depends on whether the players are trying to win or draw, They played a very balanced game the first game. That was their most solid game. And then they've played more aggressively in the other games since then. h5, gaining space for the king, I guess. Interesting. Like my dream scenario, I remember what it was like to be in Rachel's shoes. I remember when I was 17, 1800, I had almost no endgame skills except the skill of avoiding draws and just like trying to win even in bad positions and being very optimistic and stuff. So my ideal would be to bring my king here to neutralize white's d pawn and the c file so I don't have to trade rooks, and then put my rook here so I can use this pawn majority. In that plan, there's not really room for h5, so I don't really know what h5 is about. Clearly, Rachel doesn't want to trade rooks. That's right. Otherwise, she would be playing rook c8 somewhere in here, right? So we know that if white plays rook c1, she's not even planning to play rook c8. Maybe she's thinking of gaining space with something with like this bishop move, so it'll actually be threatening the pawn on h2 or something. That's kind of like an aggressive David of old kind of thought. So maybe that's something in her mind to stop rook c7, right, without trading rooks. So she defends her pawn here. Matt has an option to play d6 and trade a pawn. It doesn't look amazing for him, but sometimes when you have like an opportunity, just because it's an opportunity, you look at it. Okay, instead he goes bishop b6, and I'm happy to see this move in 2 seconds from Rachel. It means she's been alert to and aware of this bishop move. Whoops, sorry, that's me, folks. She's been alert and aware of the bishop's relation to these two squares from the moment she played a5. So it didn't come as a surprise to her when the bishop came here. She knew whenever bishop b6 happens, she has to play this. Now Matt goes for the trade, so he's going for priority placement for his rook. And then he's attacking her pawns from the side. Uh-oh. Evil. Evil from Matt. He had some slings ready here, so he really had a tricky idea in mind when he went for this. And where did he spend his time here? How did he figure this out? He spent most of his time on bishop c5, king f8. I mean, couldn't he do the same thing without bringing the king one step closer? Let's say he played here, bishop b6, rook a8, right, defending this, d6. I mean, d7 looks like a huge threat. I feel like you get the same position, same idea, and the king's just a step further away. An interesting thought is against bishop b6, maybe, a reaction for white is to not defend the pawn and trade the pawn like this, right? That gets you the active rook, the passed pawn, everything's fine. That can be applied to the game as well. After king f8, bishop b6, she played rook a8 quickly. So it's good she was aware of this bishop b6 theme, but what if I even did it this way? So my rook's helping to defend the d6 square in the meantime, right? And then I grab this pawn, hitting here. I feel like white's going to play rook d2. It looks very safe for black. So maybe a little wrinkle, an improvement move instead of rook a8 in this position, maybe some other move, rook c8, rook d6, rook b8, something like that. So d6 comes in here quickly. There's also the idea of bishop e5 takes h2, which I thought maybe she had in mind, but she didn't go for that. Activating the rook. So the dream is you take on b5 or a5, black goes rook c2, takes on g2 and a2. But there is bishop a5, rook c2, rook d2, right? That holds the extra pawn for Matt. Plays king d1. So he doesn't want to give bishop c3 check with tempo, saving this pawn, followed by some move to save this pawn maybe. He's thinking he's got both pawns attacked, so he's just going to stop rook c2. And still collect those pawns. He might. Bishop h6. Woo! She's so creative. She's so creative. And this makes you regret not finding bishop a5, rook c2, rook d2, right? You tried to control the counterplay, and then the counterplay just gets worse. It's my experience of trying to stop counterplay throughout my whole life. Yeah, hard to keep the black rook out now. I don't see any way after 10 seconds of calculating. I think Matt could smell a win for about 1 or 2 moves there with his rook d5 idea, and now he's probably smelling like the feeling of a win getting away, and then, you know, it goes back and forth a few times in the course of a full-blooded game, right? Each side has their chances and has their hiccups. Okay, so he's going to try and keep black's rook out of his position for now. But it also means he's not going to be capturing any pawns, right? So he's going to have to try and come up with a new plan for advantage here. Now, Rachel does not want to get her king trapped on e8. She wants to come forward, but again, she is just being a little nervous because the king basically has no liberties. You have to calculate rook d6, maybe f4, f5. So she's just being nervous and careful, but I think in the end she will come forward once she's dealt with her nerves for a bit. Yeah, and she has to calculate rook d6, king e5, right? She just has to, similar to last game where she wanted to stop bishop c4 with king d4, but we saw her hesitate for a while around it. It's good to be a little bit careful around these things, right? Especially if you then believe your calculation and go with the move which you feel like you should have done. Yeah, Warrior Boys production. You could have also played rook takes b5, rook c2 check, king f1, and if rook a2, rook a5. But bishop a5, rook c2, rook d2 was much better, keeping more pawns on the board, right? More chances to win, and not letting the black rook become so active. And even in your line with rook b5, rook check, king f1, black might not take on a2. They might go rook c1 check, rook c2 check. Right? We're talking here, in this position, rook here, rook check, king here, rook check. This is still annoying, right? If you want to keep this pawn and avoid the repetition, you have to go over to here. And then maybe a4. Still going after this. It could definitely go wrong compared to, look at this very, very simple line, which keeps the maximum material on the board to try and outplay your opponent with. Clean extra pawn. Just catch up with him. Okay, so king e6. Matt goes to improve the king to d3. It's slow, but it's what I would have done next. Would have been bringing the king to d3. Now b4. Rachel improving her pawn majority, but still risky. You know, that king's coming to better and better position. Now, if everything gets traded on c5, it looks like white probably has a winning king and pawn ending. It's bad news for black. The king's just embracing these pawns so they can't make a pass pawn. Even if they could trade 2 for 1, it might be winning for black, getting her king in. But they can't even trade 2 for 1. I think they just both die. So what can black do? Rook b8 check with the idea of king a5, rook a8 check. Taking on a2, drawing the rook endgame. That's one possibility. Rook b8 right here. I think white should try king a4 in case of rook b8. Matt's got a big time lead here. But I felt he was very uncertain trying to convert the pawn up position last game. F5, beautiful move from Rachel, unless it blunders something I don't see. But that's a very, very nice move. Just saying, yeah, already king a5, rook a8 is ready, so I'm not even going to spend time on the defense. Trade here, and she's starting to, you know, trade off white's big pawn majority on this side to make it easier to go after it and try and draw. And now at the end, she's hitting g2 and h2 with tension on e4. She's very good at finding the defensive ideas when she feels like she's in great danger. And then once she gets out of danger, sometimes she'll make the mistake, so to speak, of trying to win. But as long as she's in danger, the defensive instincts are very, very good. Yeah, but here, like, let's say g3, rook takes h2, then it's 3 on 3 and white's king is on the queen side. She might try to win, right? Now, sometimes she could win by trying to win. It's not always a bad thing to try to win. If I were white, I'd be a little worried here, and I might play g4 myself to trade off some pawns. Reduce white's losing chances a little bit. Yeah, should definitely be played. King c3, so just bringing the king back towards the game. But there's some danger of losing the g pawn and the h pawn now, right? Whoa, Matt risks it all on having calculated the king and pawn ending correctly there when he had us think. So takes, king e5, king e3. Okay, trade everything. King e5, king e3, g5, h3. And I guess it is a draw, yeah. Good calculation, Matt. Good calculation. Risky, but good. Oh yeah, black's winning already? I mean, the rook ending is still going to be worse for white and slightly scary if black just keeps rooks on the board, but the king and pawn ending looks like it holds. So to say that black's winning is a very bold claim. To say it looks terrifying for white, that's a reasonable claim. King c4 looks winning for black. Black can't play king c4 right now. c4 is over here. And, I mean, if you're thinking king f4, yes, I agree. King f4 would be winning for black if they could trade rooks and play that, but they can't. Okay, she goes for it. So if the tempi were slightly different, this would be a Zugzwang on white here if they didn't have the move h3. If their pawn were already on h3, then there's a chance this position is losing for white. If there is a draw, it would be some very concrete tricky line, like king f3, king d4, h4, g4 check, king f4, king c5. But I don't see it. So king f4 looks winning for yeah, but king f4 can't be played, right? So Matt shaking his head. But basically here, you know, black has to drop back, and white can even drop back themselves and just hang around. And whenever the king comes to e5, you come to e3. That holds pretty simply. And if black ever plays g4, you trade, and that's a draw. You just put your king here. Black ever plays h4, you can bring your king to g4. So there's not really anything that black can do from here. Everything's good and safe for white. G4 plays H4? What? What? I mean, you could trade and then just move your king over here. Most bizarre. G3. What? That's confusing as well. All confusing moves here at the end in this king and pawn ending. King f3. All right, let's agree to a draw here if you can hear me.
I was going to force Rachel to play it through.
I actually offered a draw in that position,
Yeah.
and Matt declined it. So I just like to I just like to point that out to everyone.
Yeah.
All right. You guys want to take 2 minutes to share your thoughts on this game? Let's keep it really short because I also want to then ask about the evaluations from the starting positions. So
yeah,
just initial thoughts on this game. Neither of you went to the C file this time. Rachel activated the queenside majority, and then Matt played d5, d6, breaking open the center, not making it past pawn, getting space for his rook to counterattack her queenside pawns en route from the center. Feelings about who was better and when and so forth?
I feel like... Oh, yeah,
go ahead. Yeah.
I feel like at that point I was better, but then I saw ghosts and played king d1. And then marched my king back to d3. Yeah, I think that's when I sort of started losing initiative. Still managed to march my king in, but I thought, yeah, after I got my rook in and I was started to attack the queenside pawns, I thought I was doing quite well. Um,
Rachel, your thought on that same moment, so to speak?
Um, I just like when I played H5, I just really didn't know what the plan was supposed to be. Like I was thinking about F5, which I think someone in the
mhm.
chat said was probably better. Yeah, I was just calculating out some things. I didn't really like any specific idea, and I just wanted to take like the less committal route and see if like at some point a center pawn push would be more appealing. And then D6 came, and I was definitely feeling like he was better there.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
Okay.
and then I thought like bringing my king up was like a little bit risky. I thought it was probably fine.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was like, okay, I hope I don't get mated here.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, and then just like the A file resource was really nice. After bishop b6 and the rook was on c5, I was like, okay, I need to figure out some kind of counterplay.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea that you can just leave the a pawn hanging in a lot of positions. Um, in fact, from the very beginning, when he plays bishop b6 for the first time, and you played rook a8 defending the pawn, you actually don't need to defend the pawn there. All the way back at move.
Oh, right, because of the same
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the way back at move 5, maybe, right at the beginning of the game, right? You can go rook d6 or rook b8, forcing him to take with the idea of rook a8, rook a2, or even just rook c8, just completely ignoring it. So that's just that alertness of some of these patterns and themes. Stick with.
Also in the rook endgame, yeah, I felt like just not as active as my rook, even though my rook is like a nice central piece. Like it's just not doing anything for the rook endgame. It's not really attacking. It's a bit of a liability after f5.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's when, yeah, I was like, okay, I'm in a little bit of trouble. I was debating whether to go rook d8 after you played rook a2
Mm-hmm.
to try and get an active rook. But the thing is, you take on the g file and then, well, maybe I should take on the f on f5 square, but and try and. But the thing is, after king takes, then I can't really attack your pawns nicely, and well, yeah. So I
Was king
decided to
b
be defensive in king c3 and go rook d2 and go into this king and pawn, which I thought was a draw. Then I thought I was losing. Then I thought it was a draw. So,
Yeah.
um,
In a real
Yeah,
game
no, it was
situation
nice.
there, Matt, feel free to use all your time before offering a king and pawn ending.
yeah.
Or you know what I mean, like you had 6 minutes and you used one, you could use
I completely
5
forgot that I
minutes
gained so much time.
and somewhere
Yeah.
between 10 and 30 seconds because you've got that 30-second increment. And that's kind of like, sacking a piece for checkmate in the middle game. Like, if you've got checkmate, you don't need more time. If you don't have checkmate, you better not have sacked the piece, right? So when you offer a basic king and pawn ending late in a game, be fairly certain if you can, would be my tip to you all. And I know there's some king and pawn endings with pawns on both sides of the board that you can't just figure out in 5 minutes. There's some where you will have to use some instinct. But something like this, 2 to 3 pawns on one side of the board, make a real attempt at solving it. And if you find that you can't solve it and you have to just go with your instinct, go with your instinct. But at least take a stab at solving it. Because you playing that move in about a minute, I know you could have done more if you were in like a tournament situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised that when you offered to trade rooks. I was
Well,
like, I think
yeah.
this is a two result thing for me. Yeah.
Yeah, because the king c3 was sort of the decider. I'd made the decision when I went king c3 that
Right.
that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
so
agree because he played rook d2 in 5 seconds, but king c3 that's a minute, right? So that's where I was saying like a minute out of about 6 that I thought you had.
Yeah.
You have another like very very plausible defensive move there in the rook ending other than king c3, which is g4.
Yeah,
Basically on the premise, you're now
I
worse
just
because your king's far away, so you just try to trade pawns.
all the pawns. Yeah, I didn't like g4 for some reason. So like g4 takes like I just thought it kind of split everything up, but obviously kind of clarity. I get rook g5 after. And then it's not so easy, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I there was some moments where like yeah, like the H5 moment, I just was like I need to play something, and then
Mm-hmm.
also like after King B5, I was just low on time. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know
Yeah.
what plan. I just knew that if you took on A5, I'd play Rook
Oh.
A8,
Oh.
and
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do, so I just played F5, but I didn't know if it was good or
Yeah.
yeah, I just
I
like
thought
I was like
F5
okay,
was
let's try to
good.
make it worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought
Although,
F5 was great.
yeah.
Okay. Yay. Yeah, I was like, okay, I just need to not make my position worse somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it does more
I
than
think,
that. You engage with his kingside pawns in a way to help you trade them all off if you end up in a
Yeah.
pawn down rook endgame. It's really good.
Yeah. Okay. Yay. I'm glad.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to steer the conversation a little bit more. So now, your thoughts after sparring these two positions for 2.5 hours, right? So we've got the Grunfeld position and the Queen's Gambit decline position. Do you feel like either of these positions is much better for white after your practice so far?
No. This seems pretty even for both, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Matt?
Yeah, it's I still stand by I'd rather be white in this Grunfeld position
Mm-hmm.
than white in the Queen's Gambit
Mm-hmm.
position.
Yeah,
Um
that's interesting. I kind of have the opposite feeling. Like if I had to pick, I would rather be the white in the Queen's Gambit decline position. But maybe
Okay.
that's just because I have more experience with the Fianchetto Bishop from all the King's Indian games.
Yeah, it's because you've
yeah.
each already developed a bias in favor of your opening. It's super cool. I
Yeah.
mentioned it at the start of the show. Um, but neither of you feel like it was like dramatically better for white, right? You
No.
felt like the positions were pretty close to equal, and you each felt a little more comfortable, quote unquote, defending uh, the opening that you normally are going to be playing.
Mhm.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, and you thought it was pretty close to equal, right? Um, I think both these positions, there's a very big question about just putting the rooks on the c file and maybe trading off the rooks, so they have that in common. To me, they look pretty close in evaluation because I think the c file is so important. I'll just share some of my thoughts. I'm not an expert on these positions. I just invented them for the two of you, using a method which hopefully you understand how you could apply it to your own further study of any openings / endgames that you want to do in the future. And so I just created them. I haven't practiced them myself. My feeling was, the C file is so valuable in most of these positions, but the D pawn's kind of hanging, so can white just jump on the C file right away or not? But if you're going to the C file and trading rooks, these bishop endings look pretty balanced between white's ability to have a little more space for their king. So normally the white king's going to be one row further up than black's. And black having that outside pass pawn that can draw the king away. So I felt like these positions were very, very close to equal, but really, really practical to play for both sides. And a big pattern I saw is that when somebody tries to win, it creates lots of possibilities for the other person to try to win. Your most balanced game was the first game,
Yeah.
where you traded rooks and you both played pretty solidly, and nobody started thinking the other person was an idiot who they were just going to beat because they wanted to beat them, right? It was a very, very solid first game. And then, the optimism and the pushing started to come to the fore a little bit more, and it created chances for both sides. And I think that's an important reality to keep in mind, right? Because you might show this position to a grandmaster rather than one of us, and they might say, oh, it's a draw. I wouldn't even play it out. I would agree to a draw with another grandmaster here, right? But if you play out this kind of position 20 times with another player from your cohort, right, then I think you're going to get something more like, 40% wins for white, 35% wins for black, and 25% draws or stuff like that, right? You'll really see like a lot of decisive results for either side, and you'll feel how it's very playable, and there's room for little tactics and ideas to come up. So that's kind of my sum up on this. I feel like overall it's a little easier to play the white position just being strong in the center. So I would give white like a 1 to 2/10 of a pawn advantage in these positions, but that's very small. I wouldn't feel very scared as black. I would probably go to the C file in most games, and not that I want to trade rooks. I want to avoid the rook trade to try and win, just like I think you do. But I think that by now I have so much experience that I would think I'm not going to be better if my opponent has the C file, and so I would just be willing to make the rook trade for now.
Yeah, I was really struggling with that, especially in the last game. Like, do I put? I just didn't know what to do. Like rook c8, rook c1. I thought if I move my rook to c8, I'm committing to trading rooks, and I didn't want to do that. So I was like, I can't play rook c8, and he plays rook c1, and then I make another move that's even worse.
Right.
So I just never put my rook on the c file.
Yeah, I kind of suspected that you were going to play rook b8.
Yeah, I was thinking
it. After you played
about
a5, b5, maybe where you played h5.
Yeah.
I was kind of feeling like you'd maybe play rook b8 to get behind your passed pawns, maybe move your king to e8. This is what I would have done like a little while ago when I was a little more aggressive if I really wanted to win this. Or maybe even today if you gave me this position in a tournament against somebody rated 1,000 points lower than me and I was feeling like, oh my god, I have to beat this 6-year-old kid rated 1,200. This would be kind of like the idea, I think, to try and outplay is you bring your king where it's in range of white's passed d pawn. So you've kind of got your eye on it. It's less dangerous. Yeah. Maybe your king could even come over and stop the invasion points on the c file. Right? Okay. And your rook, you destine it for b8 to back up your passed pawns. And then you can sort of play a longer game with more tension in this endgame. And yeah, as people in your chat mentioned, you could use an f5 break at some point if you want to jostle somewhere else. You could see how white responds to bishop e5 at some point, tickling h2. You could advance the pawns as far as you can. If nothing works, you could always go back to rook c8 and trade rooks if your king's on d7. So that might be how to try and like push the most as black. So.
Cool.
All right. Any questions before we wrap this up?
I think I'm okay.
No, that's that's really great. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's good to see you both looking pretty comfortable with your openings. I know it's an episode of Endgame Apprentice, but we are still getting your openings ready, your new openings for this tournament, and it's going to be helpful for evaluating the mid-deal game when you're choosing between trades. And when you get to these positions, I think you just feel like, yeah, I've been here before.
Yeah, maybe a little bit too comfortable with e4 in that first Grunfeld game, but it's a good note for a tournament end game going forward. Just be like, okay, it's default, but maybe let's chill for a sec. So that was good to get out of the way, I think.
Yeah, and I had you playing on the 5-second increment at that point, and the whole point of this is like every game in the bank, you're going to be better in later games. So every mistake that you've gotten out of your system is just good. Instead of worrying like, oh, I played a bad move, think like, okay, that's one bad move I'm not going to play in the future. Once you've gotten through all the bad moves, you'll just have good moves left to play.
Yeah.
I have one quick question. So should we analyze our sparring games with an engine, or at what point is it a worthwhile thing to actually bring in an engine?
I would say no. I think that at your rating level, there's 0 activities you should do with an engine. Awesome. Like literally, you don't need to touch an engine till your FIDE rating's 2200. For anything.
Yeah. So not even to like check annotation. Like I've spent 4 hours annotating a game, just like don't bother.
No.
No? Wow.
No.
Okay.
And if you can get some comments from some other players on the dojo, it can be like helpful to share like opinions with people. But again, the point is to like put in the work and to spend time thinking and just practicing your muscles. You don't need to know, if you got it right or wrong. Right? I mean, to some extent, if you compare it to muscles, like if you went into a gym and none of the weights were labeled, but you just lifted weights every day that you could lift, you didn't know. You don't have a computer engine telling you just lifted, 57 and a half. Oh no, you wanted in kilos maybe. I don't know. You just lifted 1 stone. Your muscles are getting stronger from doing the work, right? Or if you
Yeah. Nice.
I do have to bounce. So Should we
Amazing.
find someone to raid?
Sure.
Yeah,
Um,
let's do it.
it looks like Jesse February's on.
Sounds good.
Oh, nice.
If you want to raid Jesse February.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah. Okay.
awesome.
Bye, Con. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I see some comments saying that it was really informative. So that's awesome. I mean, it was, yeah. Every one that we do with David is just like so insanely helpful.
Yeah, this is
So
crazy helpful.
Yeah, it's
Like,
crazy. Yeah, it's insane how helpful this is. Like I could study like 50 hours and then just like 2 hours of David. This just like surpasses it. So yeah, thank you, David.
Well, I really hope I'm giving you
so
tools
much.
so you can do good training without me as well, right? Because that's one of the things is like we don't always have access to teachers, so it's really good to be doing useful stuff with our time, right? Like if you've got 2 hours a week with me and maybe 10 hours you're doing on your own in a week, you want those 10 hours to count as well. And I'm hoping that each week your 10 hours are being used better and better.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah, we'll have to schedule a sparring session.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm ready to raid.
Yeah.
I am also ready.
Likewise.
I'm gonna send my raid over. Bye, you guys.
See ya.
Okay. All right. Send the raid. All right. Okay. Yeah, I have to go. But thank you guys. Thank you, David, for doing this and teaching us. And yeah, it's so insanely helpful. Yeah, it's crazy helpful. So thank you.
All right. My pleasure.